Chapter 288. Is there a suitable candidate for the family I asked you to find? Thinking of this, Su Li said decisively with her eyes shining. Xian He was shocked and bowed his head. Highly great master, I dare not neglect your order. There is indeed a suitable candidate at present, but what? Can that family be stronger than the spiritual realm? Su Li's eyes were cold, and Xian He immediately sweated on his forehead. He said, No, no, no. Although the Lu family has some strength, it is not much stronger than an ant in front of the spiritual realm. Is there any problem? Su Li's words were decisive, and Xian He could only nod helplessly. At the same time, he also understood that the new highly great master was not a transcendent and gentle woman like great master Jingxin, but a more decisive existence than a man. Well, get ready, and then we will go to the Lu family. Speaking of this, Su Li paused. By the way, have the people I arranged for you arrived? Hearing Su Li's words, Xian He finally showed a smile on his face. Child Feng Yuan and others have arrived 2 days ago, and they are resting in the branch building. Although the spiritual circle was the home of the Shaoshan Palace, the spiritual realm had eyes and ears all over the illusion. It was not difficult to find Feng Yuan and others. That's good. Let's go and meet them. Su Li waved her hand and took the lead, and Xian He followed closely. Perhaps even Su Li herself did not find that her demeanor and behavior at the moment were more unpredictable than that of the female devil in the previous life. That was from the soul and the nobility of life level. The spiritual realm of the Nanjiang country was the same as that of the Dahan country. Led by Xian He, Su Li came to the guest room and soon met Feng Yuan, Chu Qingning and Feng Mu, whom she had not seen for more than half a year. In addition, Su Li specially asked Chu Xiao to send Yin Xuetong here. In this way, all the people related to the Nanjiang country were here. Su Li, what's the matter? Are you also caught by them? Chu Qingning looked surprised and doubtful. They were forcibly brought by the people of the spiritual realm and could not resist at all. Now Su Li also appeared here, so they had to think about the worst. Before Su Li spoke, Xian He couldn't help but say, Child Chu, you must be joking. We are all servants of highly great master. How can we be disrespectful to highly great master? As soon as Xian He spoke, the 4 people in the room were shocked. Even Feng Yuan's face changed. He was caught by Xian He himself. With his current cultivation, he couldn't resist at all. It was as easy as an eagle catching a chick. Such a powerful existence was absolutely a senior in the longevity realm, but he actually obeyed Su Li. She was not a member of the Wanjian sect. How could Su Li hide such a terrible power? All right, there's no need to say any more. You can leave first. Su Li frowned, and Xian He realized that he had flattered the wrong person. He could only smile bitterly in secret, saluted and nodded to leave. He moved cautiously and did not forget to gently close the door before leaving. He was as humble as dust. As soon as Xian He left, the atmosphere in the room became much more relaxed. Su Li, it is you who brought us here from the spiritual circle? That middle-aged man's cultivation is extremely terrible. How did you? Chu Qingning asked impatiently. Although he was caught along the way, he inquired about the news every day after realizing that those people were only under house arrest. However, he didn't know where it was. Everyone was very tight-lipped, which almost made him suffocated. Well, I'm lucky to control a small force, which is much more convenient for me to do things. Su Li replied briefly, which finally saved Chu Qingning from suffocation. Hearing this understatement, Feng Yuan, who had some speculation, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Was the spiritual realm a small force? The experience in the spiritual circle for more than half a year had made him fully understand the terrible background of the spiritual realm. It was definitely a giant at the same level as the Shaoshan Palace, or a higher level. But today Su Li said, the spiritual realm was already hers? Su Li glanced at Feng Yuan and didn't say much. Then she said, in short, this encounter is beneficial to me. Now that I have enough strength, I decide to complete the agreement with you first. Agreement? It was such a distant word that the 4 people who heard this sentence were stunned for a while. Then their faces changed dramatically. Su Li, Do you want to destroy the royal family of Nanjiang country? Yin Xuedong opened her beautiful eyes wide and asked incredulously. Was it possible that the Wanjian sect was used by Su Li? In her opinion, she naturally couldn't think of how terrible the so-called small force was, so she immediately had a slight misunderstanding. Su Li didn't explain, but just nodded and said, "Yes, you come with me to the Lu family tonight." The Lu family of the four families? Haven't they been exterminated and survived until now? Chu Qingning blurted out in shock. Do you know the Lu family? Su Li raised her eyebrows. She didn't ask about the information about the Lu family in detail, because she only needed a springboard to enter the palace. But judging from Chu Qingning's appearance, the Lu family seemed to be very complicated. I know more about the Lu family. Feng Mu, who had been following Feng Yuan as an obedient follower, suddenly said cautiously, the four families of Nanjiang country are the Feng family, the Chu family, the Yin family, and the Lu family. It's not difficult for Sister Su to guess something, right? Su Li's eyes showed a hint of understanding, and she nodded and said, I see. You are from the other three families of the four families. Sister Su is right. I was just a collateral disciple of the Feng family at that time, but I have a good friend who is a disciple of the Lu family, so I am familiar with the Lu family. Feng Mu frowned and said, but the strength of the Lu family is not strong on the surface, which is equal to that of the Feng family. How did they persist for so long under the suppression of the Wei family? It had been several years since the destruction of the other three families. The Lu family was absolutely abnormal. Anyway, the Lu family is already an arrow at the end of its flight. Otherwise, Xianhe will not choose it as a springboard. You all prepare to visit with me in the evening. Su Li gave an order, and everyone nodded gently. Feng Yuan secretly remembered the names Su Li said. The middle-aged man turned out to be Xianhe. Time quickly approached the night. In Tiangu City, the capital of Nanjiang country, there was a house of thousands of hectares in the south of the city. The house was brightly lit. Eldest brother, second brother, do you still want to persist until now? If you are still stubborn, we will end up like the Feng, Yin, and Chu families. In the main hall of the vestibule, there were three middle-aged men who were frowning. The faces of the three were faintly similar. It was not difficult to see that they were brothers. The one who spoke was the youngest middle-aged man, about 30 years old. Although he was dressed in beautiful clothes and wore a jade crown, his face was full of anxiety. It seemed that he was trying hard to persuade. He was the third master of the Lu family, Lu Jiang. Third brother, it's not that I don't want to give in, but now our Lu family has no ability to give in. The haggard man sitting in the first seat said helplessly. These years of struggling to maintain the family had made strands of white hair appear in his black hair, which made him look more like a man in his 60s. Lu Jiang was stunned, and his face immediately became pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. Eldest brother, our family's poisonous life-bound king? Third brother, don't say it. Your eldest brother has tried his best and even fed the poisonous life-bound king with his own blood essence. Unfortunately, after the death of the highest elder, our family can no longer find anyone who can match the poisonous life-bound king, and we can't get the blood essence of the practitioners of the longevity realm. As early as half a month ago, the poisonous life-bound king has starved to death. Lu He, the second master, sighed deeply and finally chose to confess to his third brother. If he continued to hide it, it was hard to guarantee that Lu Jiang would not do anything. Dead, actually dead. Lu Jiang's eyes were dull. He muttered a few words, and his expression suddenly became crazy and he smiled bitterly. It's all your fault. If you were not selfish and didn't offer the poisonous life-bound king to the royal family, how could our Lu family fall into such a desperate situation? It's over, everything is over. Our Lu family will be like the other three families. Looking at his third brother going crazy, Lu Hai closed his eyes painfully. He looked regretful but more helpless and complicated. At that time, he relied on the power of the poisonous life-bound king to compete with the practitioners of the longevity realm. Therefore, the Lu family got a chance of survival under the pressure of the Wei family. The Wei family took a fancy to the poisonous life-bound king and was unwilling to fight for a long time, so that the Lu family could survive for so many years. But the three brothers all knew the drawback of the poisonous life-bound king, it was extremely difficult to feed. Every poisonous insect had a specific thing. For example, the sound acquaintance of Su Li fed on singing, while the poisonous life-bound king of the Wang family fed on the blood essence. The rank of the poisonous life-bound king was extremely high, which was enough for a senior of the inborn realm to fight with the poisonous life-bound king. Correspondingly, the requirement for the blood essence became extremely harsh. Either the bloodline of someone in the Wang family returned to the ancestors and reached a very high degree of compatibility with the poisonous life-bound king, or it had to be fed with the blood of practitioners of the longevity realm. Otherwise, no matter how powerful the poisonous insect was, it was still a bug after all. Without food, it would starve to death. I didn't expect that the poisonous life-bound king would die so suddenly. But third brother, haven't you ever thought that the Wei family's ruthlessness will not change the result even if we offer the poisonous life-bound king to them? Lu He was calm and explained the serious relationship clearly, but Lu Jiang didn't listen at all. He was still muttering, "It's over." When it came to the state of mind, he was undoubtedly the worst among the three brothers. At this point, we can only take people to escape in advance. Fortunately, I transferred all the hopes of the family a few years ago. Even if we all die, the inheritance of the family will not be cut off. Lu Hai pulled an ugly smile on his face. Only this could bring him a little comfort. Something bad happened. Someone came to the door. At this time, a gatekeeper suddenly came in to report in a hurry. Now those who could stay in the Lu family were all loyal servants. Therefore, even if he was so rude, Lu Hai didn't say anything, but stood up directly. His body shook, and the bitterness on his face disappeared. He showed the dignity that the head of the family should have, and said loudly, "Who is visiting at night? It's not convenient for our Lu family to see guests now. Please go back." Chapter 289. While talking, Chu Qingning walked into the gate with a smile with his head held high and chest out, followed by Su Li and others. As for the people of the spiritual realm, they were not Xian He, but Qing Sin, the executive. Looking at a group of young boys and girls with extraordinary temperament who suddenly came uninvited, Lu Hai was slightly stunned. He recalled the young talents of the forces in Tiangu City, but found that none of them was the right one. People from other countries? Lu Hai frowned slightly and was about to ask about their origin. Lu He, the second master, stood up in surprise and doubt. He said with a faint tone of disbelief, "You are Chu Qingning, the young lord of the Chu family?" Chu Qingning smiled calmly. "It seems that second Uncle Lu has a good memory. It's really you. You were sent to the frontier, but you didn't die." Lu He looked up and down at Chu Qingning, and soon he was shocked to find that he couldn't see through Chu Qingning's cultivation. "Nephew Qingning," Jiang Hai came back to his senses and frowned, "you are too reckless. Since you have already escaped, why come back?" Although the Wei family has been at war for the past few years, their strength is still much stronger than before. You are alone. Even if you add my Lu family, it will not change anything. "Uncle Lu, you are wrong." Chu Qingning stepped aside and revealed the faces of the people behind him. "I am not the only one who came back." Seeing several people behind Chu Qingning, Lu Hai suddenly widened his eyes. "The young lord of the Fong family, the pearl of the Yin family, you are all alive and gathered together." At this moment, Lu Jiang, who had been desperate, also calmed down. He looked at Chu Qingning and others, and a glimmer of hope rose in his eyes. If the young lords of the three families still had the remaining hidden forces of their families, even the Wei family would not dare to despise them when they gathered together. No wonder they dared to come back. "Well, Qingning, let's get down to business." At this time, Su Li suddenly spoke. Although her tone was indifferent, her crisp and sweet voice made the three people of the Lu family frown at the same time. This woman seemed to be younger than Chu Qingning and others, but from her tone she was actually the leader? Could it be that the young masters of the three clans had all defected to the new forces? Lu Hai was alarmed and uncertain in his heart. His tone towards the three young masters was extremely polite, because they did not seem to be a threat. Back then, not only was the relationship between the four great clans not close, they were even suspicious of each other. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so easily defeated by the Wei family. Hearing Su Li's order, Chu Qingning didn't dare to continue to smile. He said seriously, "Today, we are here to ask for your help." "What kind of help?" "Bring us into the palace." Chu Qingning said firmly, and Lu Hai almost thought that he had heard it wrong. "Enter the palace? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I don't care which faction you belong to. My Lu clan is just a small clan. We can't afford to be tossed around. There's no way I'll go to a place as dangerous as the Imperial Palace." Lu Hai's reaction was extremely intense. It was already good enough that the Wei family did not invite them to the palace. How could there be a saying that they were courting death? Su Li's expression didn't change at all. His reaction was reasonable. Just as she was about to speak, Qing Sen, who had been observing her, came up and said respectfully, "Lord, let me say it." Su Li raised her eyebrows and immediately nodded slightly. Since someone did it for her, why should she waste her saliva? But when Lu He heard this title, his heart tightened. In terms of cultivation, he was the highest in the Lu family. He was at the peak of the inborn 8th hurdle. He could see that Qing Sen's cultivation was only one hurdle lower than his. Such a person was enough to be an elder in the martial arts circle, but Qing Sen's words and deeds were more like a servant. Who could afford a servant in the inborn 7th hurdle? He couldn't imagine. For a moment, Lu He's gaze towards Su Li became extremely cautious. "Head of the Lu family, in the current situation of your Lu family, it's better to choose to cooperate with our Lord than to sit and wait for death. Our Lord is so powerful that the Wei family is not his opponent at all. But our Lord is kind and doesn't want to cause the Tiangu city to suffer because of the Wei family, so he appeared here." Qing Sen showed a gentle smile, but the next words made the three leaders of the Lu family feel cold all over, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. "If I guess right, the poisonous insect king of your Lu family should have starved to death, and there is no longer any reliance to threaten the Wei family. If you don't choose to cooperate, then our Lord can only make this unwise move and let your Lu family be the pathfinder first." Lu Hai didn't show any change on the surface, but he was shocked in his mind. This was the top secret of the Lu family. How could it be leaked? He glanced at the second brother and the third brother, who changed their faces. After a moment of silence, he finally showed a bitter smile on his face. "Yes, we have no way back. I don't know how you want to cooperate with our Lu family." Su Li slightly raised the corner of her mouth, without a trace of anger. "Tomorrow, your Lu family will take my people into the palace for the reason of offering the poisonous insect king. Don't worry about other things." Lu Hai's heart thumped. The girl seemed to be weak, but when she spoke, he knew that she was very overbearing and not easy to talk to. He pondered for a few seconds and then slowly said, "This matter, please allow me. I don't have so much time to waste with you, and I will go to the palace tomorrow." Su Li interrupted him, and Lu Hai's look immediately became ugly. Lu He snorted coldly, "Little girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How powerful is the Wei family? You only bring an inborn 8th hurdle, and you want to force my Lu family to deal with the Wei family for you. It's simply wishful thinking. Today I will let you see what is called strength." After that, a horrible power of the inborn 8th hurdle immediately broke out, rolling up the wind and sweeping over with a sonic boom. Qing Sen's face changed slightly, and he stood in front of Su Li. When he was about to block this move for Su Li, Fang Yuan, who had been standing silently by Su Li's side, moved. Without any movement, the sword in his hand had been unsheathed. A stunning sword light flashed in the air. It couldn't be said to be one, but a total of 9 sword lights combined into one. Fang Yuan unexpectedly stabbed 9 swords at this moment. Bang! Qing Sen was shocked and stepped back a few steps. He looked at the front in amazement and saw that Fang Yuan's sword had been across Lu He's neck. The sleeve of Lu He's hand had been thin, and there was a deep sword wound on the back of his hand that could see the bone. Drops of blood flowed down from his fingertips. Fang Yuan's cultivation was so powerful that he was defeated in one move of the inborn 8th hurdle. Chu Qingning pursed his lips and muttered, "This guy is in the limelight again." Although Yin Xuedong wanted to cooperate with a smile, now the revenge was imminent, and she was not naturally open-minded like Chu Qingning. Finally, she just pulled the corner of her mouth and showed a touch of helplessness. "So far, your Lu family has only one choice." Fang Yuan looked at Lu He, who was frightened, and said coldly. Then he slowly moved the sword in his hand. Clang! The sword was sheathed. Su Li saw this scene, and her face showed a thoughtful expression, but she did not say anything. Lu He was shocked, and he sat back to his position with his legs weak. Seeing Fang Yuan return to Su Li expressionlessly, his lips trembled, but he did not know what to say. How many years had it been? Fang Yuan actually cultivated from the acquired hurdle to the inborn 9th hurdle. Even if he stayed in the practice pool of the sect all day, it would not be so fast. Phew, Lu Hai exhaled as if he wanted to spit out all the shock just now. He looked back at Su Li again, and his eyes were quite different. Fang Yuan could be trained to the inborn 9th hurdle in just a few years. Such ability, even the Wei family could not compare with him. Maybe he could really take a gamble. You're right. Our Lu family really has no way out. So, please tell us the plan, and we can make full preparation. There is nothing to prepare. Su Li said lightly, the only thing your Lu family has to do is to take us to see the people of the Wei family. You don't need to intervene in the following war. Lu Hai smiled helplessly. Su Li obviously did not believe him and refused to disclose any information. But now that he had promised to join Su Li's camp, he could only suppress the uneasiness in his heart and nodded. After dealing with the Lu family, Su Li left quickly. The 3 brothers of the Lu family spent a whole night to forge an ordinary poisonous insect exactly the same as the poisonous insect king's corpse. Before they had time to rest for a while, Su Li arrived. This time, Su Li was not followed by Fang Yuan, but Xian He and 100 dare-to-die soldiers of the spiritual realm wearing the clothes of the Lu family's guards. Seeing such a battle, Lu Hai's pupils shrank, and the uneasiness in his heart faded a lot. The armor of the guards of the Lu family was specially made. In recent years, the Lu family had been weak and it was impossible to make many sets. But Su Li made so many sets in just one night, which was enough to prove her magical power. In fact, after Xian He chose the family, he began to make it in a hurry. If there was only one day, even the spiritual realm could not make it. Su Li glanced at the fake poisonous insect king and made sure there was no mistake. Then she immediately ordered to set off. The team of hundreds of people marched to the imperial palace in a mighty manner, which naturally attracted the attention of the Wei family. Stop! The forbidden area of the imperial palace. No one is allowed to enter. The commander of the imperial palace shouted and stopped the team. His eyes roughly glanced behind the 3 brothers of the Lu family, and finally fell on Lu Hai. He sneered, "Why? Head of the Lu family brings so many people here. Do you want to rebel?" Lu Hai smiled embarrassedly and said submissively, "Of course not. I come here to present a treasure to the emperor. Please inform him. As for these guards, they are just to buy time for us to protect ourselves." Seeing that Lu Hai was so humble, the commander's expression changed slightly. Seeing the wooden box in his hand, he couldn't help but feel shocked. "Is it in your hand? It's the poisonous insect king." Lu Hai answered and bowed, "I have disconnected with this poisonous insect. If you don't believe me, you can check it yourself." Sure enough, the Lu family surrendered. The commander was happy. If he could get the poisonous insect king and present it to the emperor, it would be a great credit. "Head of the Lu family, thank you. I will give it to the emperor, and you don't have to enter the imperial palace to take risks. Isn't it the best of both worlds?" As he said, the commander reached out to grab the wooden box. Lu Hai's face changed slightly when he heard the words, and he quickly retracted his hand. The commander grabbed nothing, and his face immediately became gloomy. "Lu Hai, what do you mean? Don't you intend to present the treasure to the emperor at all?" Swish, swish, swish. As soon as the commander said this, the imperial guards around the imperial palace immediately drew their swords against each other, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Chapter 290. Commander Xiang, I come with sincerity to present the treasure to His Majesty. Lu Hai had been the head of the family for more than 10 years. At present, the situation was not good, but he still kept calm and said in a deep voice, "This is the treasure of my family. Only by giving it to His Majesty in person can I feel at ease. Otherwise, if it is replaced halfway, who can I ask for justice? And you can't afford it." Commander Xiang's face changed slightly and became a little ugly. Lu Hai didn't give him face at all, but what he said was not unreasonable. If Lu Hai really cheated him with a fake poisonous insect king, he would not only not be rewarded, but also be severely punished by His Majesty. Although Lu Hai was probably scaring him, this kind of risk he didn't need to take. Thinking of this, Commander Xiang snorted coldly and waved his right hand. The imperial guards behind him all made way for him. Then he stepped aside and said lightly, "Please, head of the Lu family." Lu Hai breathed a sigh of relief and said with a fist and palm salute, "Thank you." After that, he immediately disappeared into the palace gate with many guards behind him. Commander Xiang couldn't help but sneer, "Oh, stupid. The three brothers of the Lu family still have a low vision. They can't do anything to us." How could he not see that Lu Hai entered the palace with an ulterior purpose? But a small family that survived with the poisonous insect king also wanted to compete with the royal family? Did he really think that the Wei family would be afraid of the poisonous insect king of the longevity realm? He had seen the old ancestor of the longevity realm of the family with his own eyes. His power was much more horrible than the poisonous insect king. The royal family didn't attack the Lu family just because they were no longer a threat. Now that the Lu family came to die and sent a poisonous insect king, there was no reason to reject them. Under the care of Commander Xiang, Lu Hai and his party entered the palace without any hindrance and went all the way to the palace hall. The middle-aged man with a square face on the throne in the hall wore a yellow robe. He was dignified without being angry, with the elegance of a scholar. No one would think that he was the master of the Wei family, Wei Yanghong, who had stirred up a bloody storm in Nanjiang country these years. At this moment, Wei Yanghong glanced at the three brothers of the Lu family and finally fixed his eyes on Lu Hai. With a faint smile, he said, "Master of the Lu family, a wise man submits to circumstances. It is the right choice to offer the Gu King to me." Lu Hai's knuckles that were holding onto the box were so tight that they turned white. He did not reply. He had already completed everything here. Why was the mysterious girl still not moving? Wei Yanghong's sixth senses were extremely sharp. Lu Hai's hesitation immediately made him feel that something was amiss. At this time, Su Li, who was wearing the armor of the Lu family, finally said indifferently, "Do it." Before she finished her words, hundreds of men of sacrifice of spiritual realm shot out with dense killing intent. In less than 3 breaths, the 700 Imperial Army soldiers guarding the hall were all killed. The burst of aura caused Wei Yanghong's expression to change slightly. More than 100 guards of the Lu clan were all Xiantian realm cultivators. Something was amiss. Assassin! Guards! The sharp voice of the eunuch beside Wei Yanghong broke through the sky, and he himself also burst out the aura of the peak of the pre-celestial stage, blocking in front of Wei Yanghong, and chopped towards the nearest Lu Hai. How dare the Lu clan collude with outsiders? Die! The director of the imperial palace turned out to be a hidden senior. The 3 brothers of the Lu family retreated in horror. At this moment, a flash of sword light suddenly broke out from the side. So fast! Oh no! The old eunuch roared ferociously and wanted to avoid it, but the sword was so fast that he had no time to react. At the moment when he saw the sword light, the result was already doomed. The old eunuch's face immediately froze, and then a line of blood appeared on his neck. His head fell down with a thud sound. Before he made any achievement, he was beheaded by a sword. Lu Hai stared blankly at the headless body that fell on the ground, and then looked in the direction of the sword light. He happened to see Fang Yuan put away his sword. He was also at the peak of the pre-celestial stage, but he was killed by Fang Yuan, who was only 20 years old. At this time, He knew that Fang Yuan's strength was much more horrible than he imagined. After killing the obstacles around Wei Yanghong, Fang Yuan stepped forward indifferently and grabbed Wei Yanghong, who was still pretending to be calm. He pulled him in front of Su Li and threw him fiercely. Lu Hai and others heard a clear, crack sound, and their scalps were numb. "Who the hell are you?" Wei Yanghong endured the severe pain between his knees, looked up and glanced at Fang Yuan, Chu Qingning and others, and finally looked at Su Li. "Are you the reinforcement brought by these juniors?" Su Li smiled slightly and said, "I'm not a reinforcement. It's just a deal." "Ha!" Wei Yanghong suddenly laughed when he heard the words. "Girl, you are too young. Although I don't understand how the juniors of these three families persuaded you to fight against me, you must have been cheated. How can you imagine the background of my Wei family?" Su Li's face was indifferent, as if she was indifferent. Wei Yanghong saw this, but he did not stop persuading her and continued to say, "I know all the forces of Nanjiang country. You are not a citizen of Nanjiang country, so you have no grievance with my Wei family. Why do you want to get involved? If you let me go and leave with your people, I will not pursue it. But if you are still stubborn, no one can leave here today." "No grievance," Su Li repeated, and her little face bloomed with a smile. "Your Majesty, let me ask you, who made the decision to cooperate with the Hahuan sect to deal with the Ling family?" Wei Yanghong's face changed in an instant. How could this woman know such a secret? Just when he was in doubt, there was a buzzing sound around the hall, and then there was a burst of fog in the hall, which wrapped the whole hall. Tactical matrix. Lu Hai and others immediately reacted and looked around at the dare-to-die soldiers of the spiritual realm who had been hidden in the fog. At this moment, they understood what Su Li wanted to do. As long as there was a tactical matrix, they would take the initiative. The Wei family could not crush them by numbers, but by strength. "Well, head of the Wei family, you need to delay time, and I happen to need it too. But now the tactical matrix has been formed, so don't talk nonsense. I see that the people of your Wei family are also outside the hall. Why don't you go with me?" Su Li said with a smile. Wei Yanghong only felt a chill. His purpose had already been seen through by this woman at a glance. Before he could resist, Fang Yuan had carried him to the edge of the tactical matrix outside the hall. Looking around, the square under the stone steps outside the hall was densely packed with imperial guards. Many princes and princesses came one after another, including the sixth princess, Wei Zhenjin. Standing in the front was a white-haired old man in a black robe. When this person saw Fang Yuan carrying Wei Yanghong whose legs were broken, his face instantly became gloomy. "Junior, it seems that you are not going to leave here alive." Fang Yuan smiled coldly and did not answer. Su Li glanced at the old man in a black robe and said softly, "Are you Wei Hetien, the old ancestor of the Wei family?" Hearing this, the old man in a black robe noticed the petite Su Li standing on one side. At this time, he noticed that both Fang Yuan and others stood at least half a body behind Su Li. The real speaker turned out to be her? The old man in a black robe was shocked, but he didn't show any strange expression on his face. He said sarcastically, "You are just a silly girl. How can you be qualified to see the old ancestor of the Wei family? I am Wei Sun, the first elder of the Wei family." When Wei Zhenjin saw Su Li, there was a touch of doubt in her eyes. After a moment, she suddenly exclaimed, "Princess Li! Are you Princess Li of the Dahan country, Su Li?" The old man in a black robe's face changed slightly. Did the Dongfang family even come here? Su Li glanced at Wei Zhenjin and didn't look at her. She chuckled and said, "Princess Li, I am not a member of the Dongfang family. Maybe the first elder can call me Mr. Li, Mr. Li." "Mr. Li?" The old man in a black robe's face changed dramatically. After the auction of the Dahan country, the name was no longer limited to the Dahan country. Of course, he had heard of it. It was said that Mr. Li's medical skills were no worse than Qi Xianqing's, and his cultivation was unfathomable. But who could think that Mr. Li was actually a girl of 16 or 17 years old? "Wei Yanghong, it seems that you are not important enough to draw out the old ancestor of the Wei family. Seeing that Wei Sun didn't respond for the time being, Su Li chuckled beside Wei Yanghong. Wei Yanghong looked strange, but his tone didn't change. Su Li, the first elder, is in charge of the affairs of the Wei family. His power is still above me. If you have any request, you can say it now. Request? Su Li covered her mouth and chuckled. When she was about to say something, Wei Sun, who was very close to her, suddenly moved. Swish! Under his old body, a strong force broke out. The floor tiles under his feet suddenly exploded. He turned into a residual shadow and rushed to Su Li, almost making a sonic boom in the air. At the same time, his right palm became a claw and fiercely grabbed Su Li's delicate neck. Seeing that Su Li seemed to be scared by the sudden attack and was stunned, he was happy in his heart. Since Su Li was the master, as long as he controlled Su Li, everything could be solved easily. Just at the moment when his palm was about to touch her neck, Su Li suddenly showed a strange smile on her face. "Oh no, I am tricked!" Wei Sun screamed in his heart. When he was about to withdraw his hand, Xian He suddenly appeared like a phantom and grabbed Wei Sun's wrist with one hand. Then a clear crack resounded through the nothingness. Wei Sun groaned and wanted to borrow the force of his palm to get away. But Xian He followed him closely like a maggot in a tarsal bone. In the blink of an eye, Xian He had hit Wei Sun 4 or 5 times. Bang, bang, bang. Every time he was hit, Wei Sun took a step back. Until the last hit he barely stood still, but he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He was too strong. Wei Sun looked at Xian He, who looked indifferent in horror. This person was definitely not the first hurdle of the longevity realm like him. At least, he was at the peak of the first hurdle. He was not his opponent at all. Thinking of this, Wei Sun glanced at Wei Yanghong, who still had the desire to survive in his eyes. A ruthless look flashed across his face. When Wei Zhenjin and other princes and princesses were stunned, he decisively ordered. Chapter 291. First Elder, no. Father is still in their hands. Wei Zhenjin and other princes and princesses exclaimed, but Wei Sun didn't seem to hear it. The imperial guards executed the order without hesitation. For a time, hundreds of condensed beams of spiritual power shot to the place where Su Li was. Su Li smiled slightly and took Wei Yanghong a step back unhurriedly, just isolating all the attacks outside the tactical matrix. Wei Sun's face suddenly changed, and he found that there was a big tactical matrix around the palace. Hundreds of beams of spiritual power bombarded on it, but it didn't make any waves. What level of the big tactical matrix was it? The defensive ability was so strong. Seeing Wei Sun's shocked face, Su Li didn't forget to laugh in a low voice. "It seems that you, the emperor, are more useless than I thought. You have worked hard to build the country, but you have to give it to others." Wei Yanghong's face was pale, and his forehead was full of cold sweat. It was unknown whether it was because of excessive blood loss or because of Wei Sun's ruthlessness. He snorted coldly, "Instead of letting you occupy my Nanjiang country, it is better to help the descendants of my Wei family. You want to take me as a hostage? You should just give up on this idea." Surrounded by the array of imperial guards, Wei Sun approached the edge of the tactical matrix. Hearing Wei Yanghong's words, he loudly praised, "Su Li, no matter who you are, you can't leave alive today." Xiang Shi. Commander Xiang, whose name was called, stepped forward with trepidation and said quickly, "First Elder, the order of emergency assembly has been issued. In a few minutes, the entire city guards of Tiangu City will be here. At that time, these thieves can't escape." Seeing Xiang Shi pretending to be confident, Wei Sun snorted coldly and said in a cold voice, "Go and prepare. After this matter, you will be investigated for dereliction of duty." Yes, First Elder, I will go now." Seeing that Wei Sun didn't teach him a lesson, Xiang Shi was relieved and left in a hurry. After dealing with this matter, Wei Sun turned his head and grinned, "Stupid. Little girl, do you think that you can run amok in the territory of my Wei family with a senior of the second hurdle of the longevity realm and a turtle shell? You've brought less than 100 people with you. How strong can the formation you've set up be? If 1,000 people can't break it, what about 10,000 people? How about 100,000 people?" Su Li raised her eyebrows and did not answer. Wei Sun was relieved and concluded that Su Li had no power to struggle. His tone became sharp. I'll give you two choices now. First, release the family leader, and your people will take my Wei family's vital goo and listen to my orders, fighting for Wei family. Not only can you keep your life, but you can also enjoy glory, splendor, wealth, and even a certain amount of power in the Wei family. As for you, an evil light flashed in Wei Sun's eyes. It would be a pity if he took the life goo at such a young age. I'm lacking a goddaughter to serve me. If you agree, I can guarantee that you won't need to consume the life goo, and no one in the entire Wei family will be able to bully you. What do you think? After that, Wei Sun looked forward to Su Li's answer. Wei Zhenjin was anxious and said angrily, First Elder, Su Li is the culprit. She broke my father's legs and has no dignity. How can you let her go? How dare you? Don't you have the right to make decisions for me? Wei Sun scolded angrily. When he was about to say something, there was a burst of applause in the tactical formation. Clap, 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 clap. Seeing Wei Sun turn his head, Su Li stopped and shook her head. I really don't understand how such a stupid family can sit on the throne of a country. Wei Sun was furious when he heard the words, but Su Li interrupted him before he could say anything harsh. Find Xianyi do it. Since the old ancestor of Wei family doesn't come out, let's force him out. Xianyi immediately flashed out and slapped at Wei Sun with his cold palms. If the master was humiliated, the subject would die. Wei Sun's offending words just now had aroused his real anger, and he slapped with all his strength. The airwave was like a terrible hurricane, blowing the imperial guards around. Wei Sun, who thought he was safe in the tactical formation, immediately panicked. They couldn't stop it. The tactical formation of 1,000 people couldn't stop it. This was a tactical formation composed of 1,000 people at the peak of the acquired realm. This person was more than just the second hurdle of the longevity realm. Wei Sun had no time to remind them. Without saying a word, he ran back crazily. He escaped with his life for a while, but those imperial guards were not so lucky. Under the pressure of the horrible palm, they burst into blood mist one after another. Panic immediately spread, and they fled in all directions. They had worked hard to get to where they were. They had entered the army for a way out, not to die for the Wei family. Damn it, stop it for me, a group of ungrateful people. Wei Sun scolded crazily, exerted his body movement to the extreme, and struggled to support Xianyi. As long as he held on for 5 minutes, he could get a chance to live. 5 minutes. At the thought of this, Wei Sun wanted to curse again. If it weren't for these imperial guards who fled, he wouldn't have fallen into such a miserable situation. Traitors, all of you are traitors. When the reinforcements come, you will all die. Wei Sun scolded. Under the oppression of Xianyi, he soon couldn't even speak. But as the first elder of the Wei family, he had been immersed in the first hurdle of the longevity realm for decades. He barely survived with his unique means, and he only hoped that the reinforcements would come soon. Even if he was in the third hurdle of the longevity realm, he couldn't survive under the pressure of 100,000 city guards. Under the protection of the inborn senior, Wei Zhenjin barely escaped to the side of the palace, but other less talented princes and princesses were not so lucky. They had become a part of the blood mist in the sky. Princess, this person's cultivation is really terrible. The first elder can't stop him. Let's go to ask the old ancestor to come out. The guard beside her reminded her in time. Wei Zhenjin, who was at a loss, finally grasped a life-saving straw. Her eyes brightened. Yes, the old ancestor of the Wei family is still alive. Hurry up. I'm going to ask the old ancestor to come out. Go. Wei Zhenjin didn't care about her usual arrogance. She just grabbed the guard's arm and was taken away by him. She didn't know that her every word and deed was seen by Su Li. Fang Yuan stared coldly at the direction where Wei Zhenjin left. He leaned over and touched the hilt of the sword. But at this moment, Su Li stopped him with one hand. In Fang Yuan's puzzled eyes, she smiled slightly. Don't worry. Cast a long line to catch a big fish. You will take action later. Fang Yuan stopped and returned to Su Li. After a moment, he suddenly raised his head and said to Su Li, "Thank you." "What are you thanking me for?" Su Li didn't look back at him. She said in an ethereal tone, "In fact, everything I do is for myself. If you thank me, I will feel awkward." Fang Yuan frowned. He didn't understand. Nanjiang country and Su Li had nothing to do with each other. How could they be together? "Later, you will understand." Su Li didn't say much. She squatted down and gently pinched Wei Yanghong's wrist with her nails. But after a long time, no life ring appeared. "It's a native spirit of the Neverland." Su Li was disappointed. Then she threw Wei Yanghong between Fang Yuan and Chu Qingning without hesitation. "He is useless. Which one of you will do it?" Before she finished her words, a knife light flashed from Chu Qingning's waist and cut Wei Yanghong's neck in an instant. Wei Yanghong didn't even have time to beg for mercy. "You broke the rules." Yin Xuetong pulled out the dagger halfway and put it back angrily. Chu Qingning smiled and said, "Don't be angry. I killed him because you killed him. I will avenge you. Besides, there will be enemies to kill later. You don't need to care about this one." Chu Qingning looked at Fang Yuan and Fang Mu, whose faces were dark. He subconsciously lowered his voice. "At worst, I will let you kill some people later." After saying this, Fang Mu looked much better. His eldest brother broke Wei Yanghong's legs at least. Brother Ning and sister Tong were a family. He was the most miserable one. He didn't even touch Wei Yanghong's hair. No one thought whether it was wrong to despise Wei Yanghong's life. The hatred of exterminating a family was absolutely irreconcilable. Only when the blood of the Wei family flowed like a river could they relieve the hatred in their hearts. The time to finish half a cup of tea passed quickly, but to Wei Sun, every breath of time was so long. Facing Xian He's continuous attacks, his mind had been exhausted to the extreme. If Xian He hadn't only used his bare hands to deal with him, he would probably have died long ago. Just when Wei Sun thought he was going to die, a lot of fluctuations suddenly sounded behind him. "Kill! Kill all the traitors and protect the emperor." The city guards finally came. Wei Sun was overjoyed. But the joy didn't last for half a breath. A pair of white jade-like palms suddenly appeared. These were not Xian He's hands. Wei Sun was frightened. The last strength in his body broke out and he wanted to avoid it. But he retreated quickly, and the speed of the palms was faster. In the blink of an eye, his pubic region was broken like a phantom. Wei Sun only felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. His genuine energy was exhausted, and his breath was instantly weak. The hands didn't seem to give him time to be sad. They held his shoulders, and Wei Sun felt dizzy. When he woke up again, he found himself in the palace, and Wei Yanghong, who had just died, was lying next to him. He was caught and brought into the palace in the blink of an eye? No matter how bad his situation was, he was also in the longevity realm. His genuine energy was restrained into gang, and it was as hard as a rock. How could his cultivation be so easily broken? Was it possible that in addition to Xian He, there were people in the fourth realm of longevity realm, or even more horrible people in the dark? Wei Sun looked confused and frustrated. He raised his head and saw Xian He hurriedly return to the palace. Under his puzzled gaze, he suddenly knelt down and said sadly, "It's my fault to let highly great master take action in person." Highly great master? Looking at the direction where Xian He knelt down, Wei Sun saw the person who was called highly great master. The confusion on his face instantly turned into dullness. "It doesn't matter. I just did it on a whim. You don't have to blame yourself." Su Li waved her hand and looked at the dense and overwhelming city guards outside. She said, "Well, let's go on to the next step. They should also arrive." Just as Su Li's voice fell, a burst of bright light suddenly burst in the slightly dim palace. Chapter 292. In the originally spacious hall, mysterious patterns that were formed by items that contained spiritual power had appeared out of nowhere. It was another big tactical matrix. Wei Sun took a closer look and found that the complexity of this tactical matrix was far more than those he usually saw, so he couldn't guess the origin of this tactical matrix from the patterns. But soon he understood the function of this tactical matrix. Rumble. The spiritual power of heaven and earth gathered from the nothingness with a muffled sound, and then a mysterious power was emitted from the tactical matrix. The space in the tactical matrix suddenly became unreal like flowers in the fog. There was bush, 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 bush. One after another, unidentified people appeared from the tactical matrix. The fluctuation of the space didn't stop until there were no more people standing in the tactical matrix space. Then there were 218 people in the spacious hall. Transmission matrix. It's the long-lost transmission matrix. Wei Sun's face was pale, and his lips trembled. There was no hope in his eyes. Instead, there was a deep panic about the future of the Wei family. In just half a cup of tea's time, they had arranged a teleportation array, and none of the warriors that were teleported out were at the Xiantian 5th stage. With such a quality army, they could easily fight against 100 enemies. The tens of thousands of city guards outside could at most be on par with them. What's more, the fluctuation of the transmission matrix didn't stop. The sound of the city guards attacking the protective matrix gradually became louder, but Wei Sun turned a deaf ear to it. He stared at groups of warriors of the inborn realm coming out of the transmission matrix. Until there were 2,000 warriors, Wei Sun finally couldn't stand the blow and fainted. Highly great master, Xianhe came over and saw Su Li frowning slightly. He quickly changed his words. Master, the palace is too small, and we can't fit more people. But 2,000 spiritual guards are definitely enough to sweep away all the obstacles outside. Su Li nodded slightly and looked up, then stop. Su Li nodded slightly and looked up, let's stop. It's almost time. As soon as she finished her words, the team of 100 people who maintained the tactical matrix suddenly vomited blood, and a series of sounds like glass breaking came from the tactical matrix above their heads. The protective matrix was broken. Who dares to disturb my peace? An old voice that was calm but filled with anger exploded in the void. Xianhe's expression changed slightly as he raised his head to look. Sure enough, he saw a slightly stooped old man in linen slowly walking over from the horizon. The old man's appearance was very ordinary. If it wasn't for the background of the surrounding scene, he would look more like an old farmer working in the countryside. However, as soon as Xianhe's eyes fell onto this person, there seemed to be a brilliant light behind the latter, and it actually caused him to be slightly unable to open his eyes. Not good, First Prime. This person is definitely a Void Realm expert. I'm definitely not his opponent. Only the top 5 building masters can deal with him. Xianhe cursed. The Void Realm was also the 5 realms of longevity. Upon reaching this realm, the physical body and the heaven and earth would form a natural cycle, and the cultivator would be able to break free from gravity and stand in the air like an immortal. His strength was beyond the imagination of the cultivators in the first 4 stages of longevity realm. Xianhe was lucky enough to see the first head of spiritual realm in action. His strength was really earth-shattering and could topple mountains and overturn seas. Su Li narrowed her eyes slightly and stared at the old ancestor of the Wei family who was walking leisurely. Wei Hetian. No wonder that the Wei family had internal and external troubles and provoked many troubles, but it was never destroyed. Instead, it became more and more powerful. It turned out that there was such a great Buddha in charge. Even in the spiritual circle, such a cultivation was top, and there would be no decent resistance in the martial arts circle. When Su Li was thinking, the old man had come to the front of the hall. When he saw Wei Yanghong, who had fallen in a pool of blood and lost his breath, and Wei Sun, whose cultivation was destroyed, his calm face was suddenly broken. 2 important juniors of the Wei family were killed by you, and 1 was injured. Then all of you will stay and die with them. He didn't ask any questions or even Su Li's name, and directly made a judgment. Decisively, the momentum of the Void Realm swept the hall like a wave, and even the sky became gloomy at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was extremely depressing. What kind of old monster is this? Chu Qingning was scared and screamed. Yin Xuetong's beautiful face turned pale. Even Fang Yuan, who always walked in front of everyone, couldn't help but look pale and tense. Xianhe's face changed dramatically. He stood in front of Su Li and hurriedly transmitted the sound, "Highly great master, take everyone to escape. The transmission matrix can still be used. As long as you reverse the lines to the spiritual realm, you will be safe." Su Li took a deep breath, and the genuine energy in her body immediately began to run according to a strange track. At the same time, she felt a faint tingling in her wrist, which was a sign that her foundation was about to be consumed violently. Suddenly, a gray shadow flashed from the sky at a very fast speed. Fast. It was as fast as a swan. In less than a blink of an eye, the gray shadow actually came to Wei Hetien, and then stretched out his hand to Wei Hetien's palm. The next moment, boom! The shock wave blasted the solid palace into powder in an instant, and completely became history. And it spread at a very fast speed, causing countless palace groups to collapse. Chu Qingning was shocked to see the imperial palace become flat. Just a fight between the two people made a small part of the imperial palace collapse. "Who?" He breathed a sigh of relief, and his face showed joy. The material of this palace was extraordinary. It blocked 70% of the impact. With his buffer, there were no casualties in the palace. But outside the palace, He pitifully looked at the blood foam piled up like a mountain outside. Tens of thousands of city guards did not play much role and died in the hands of their own people. "Do you know this person?" Su Li calmed the boiling genuine energy in her body, and the tingling in her wrist also eased. Then she had time to ask. He hurriedly said, "Master, the person is the second head of the spiritual realm, Yu Wuhai, who is in charge of the secular spiritual realm. Now he must be aware of your crisis, so he took the initiative to fight." Su Li nodded slightly. Looking at the two people who constantly collided in the sky and set off waves of horrible fluctuations, she stopped talking. After all, Yu Wuhai was the third head of the spiritual realm, and his cultivation was even higher than Wei Hetian's. Soon Wei Hetien showed signs of defeat, and it would not take long for him to be completely defeated. But if you want to capture him alive, Su Li's eyes flashed. It would take some time for the result of the battle to come out. She walked to Wei Sun and stabbed Wei Sun's wrist with one finger. Suddenly, a faint blue light lit up. Life ring. An outsider. A cold light flashed in Su Li's eyes immediately. She immediately stood up and ordered, "Put this person in prison. Don't hurt his life. I still need him." He naturally took the order and sent someone to take Wei Sun away to protect him. Su Li didn't hide this scene. Fang Yuan, Chu Qingning and others all saw it clearly. Su Li stood up and saw the doubt in Fang Mu's eyes. She smiled slightly and looked at Fang Yuan. "Don't you have anything to ask?" Chu Qingning opened his mouth and wanted to say something. Before he spoke, he was interrupted by Fang Yuan. "I believe you." Fang Mu saw the firm look on his eldest brother's face, and immediately swallowed the question in his throat. It was a little hard to hold it. Fang Yuan's expression remained unchanged. He fixed his eyes on Su Li and barely hid the passion in his eyes. "I believe that you must have your reasons for doing this. I won't ask. If you want to tell me one day, I will be happy to listen." "Brother Fang." Yin Xuetong hesitated. The Wei family was the enemy of all of them. If Su Li kept the lives of the Wei family, how should they face their deceased relatives? Su Li glanced at Yin Xuetong with an eternal smile on her face. "I won't keep their lives. But they can't die now." "When could they die?" Yin Xuetong wanted to ask, but she didn't say it in the end. Along the way, although many of Su Li's actions were unclear and even unbelievable, without exception, Su Li told them with facts that the decisions she made were correct. The seed of trust had long been buried in their hearts. Even if they were facing the enemy of the extermination of their families at the moment, everyone chose to believe in Su Li's decision after hesitating for a moment. "Fang Yuan, thank you." A sweet smile appeared on Su Li's lips. Fang Yuan's heart moved slightly, and the scene in front of him became a little unreal. Except for Ling Li, she had never shown such an expression to anyone. At this moment, what Su Li brought to him was not happiness, but a deep uneasiness. She would never change what she decided, which once made him desperate. He could only numb himself with crazy practice. But now, Did Su Li's change indicate something? God didn't give Fang Yuan too much time to think. Soon there was a violent fluctuation in the nothingness. Then a gray shadow flashed. A middle-aged drinker with a stubble beard and untidy appearance appeared in front of everyone, dragging Wei Hetien, who was like a dead dog. A touch of surprise flashed in Su Li's eyes. He actually captured Wei Hetien by himself. His strength was beyond her imagination. "Lord Wuhai, I'm Xian He." Xian He stepped forward and saluted. Yu Wuhai nodded slightly and passed Xian He, leaving Wei Hetien in front of Su Li. After glancing at her, he said without respect, "Are you Su Li?" Su Li was indifferent and silent. Yu Wuhai didn't get angry. He said in a plain tone as if he was stating a fact. "Although I don't know why Lord Jing Xian regards you as her master, a little girl who is only in the longevity realm doesn't deserve to be the great master. It's not up to you to decide whether I deserve it or not." Su Li retorted lightly. Yu Wuhai showed a touch of sarcasm on his face and said firmly, "Lord Jing Xian will definitely wake up. At that time, you will taste the bitter fruit. It's not up to you to decide my ending." Su Li's expression didn't change at all. Yu Wuhai snorted coldly, "You deserve to be the existence who can bewitch Lord Jing Xian. It's a pity that such a state of mind is not used in the right way. Before that, I will still unconditionally carry out the orders that Lord Jing Xian arranged about you. But it doesn't mean that I believe you. I will thoroughly investigate what happened that day. You take care of yourself?" After Yu Wuhai finished his words, he didn't wait for Su Li's reply. He turned around and disappeared in the sky. Chapter 293. Yu Wuhai's bad attitude towards Su Li immediately made Xian He, who had been praising him, feel extremely embarrassed. Until Yu Wuhai's figure completely disappeared in the sky, Xian He said embarrassedly, "Master, no need to say more." There was no sign of anger on Su Li's calm face. "Go and do your work." Xian He, who wanted to say a few more good words for Yu Wuhai, could only helplessly respond. He walked to the 2,000 spiritual guards and gave an order. The spiritual guards immediately turned into ghosts and rushed to other directions in the imperial palace. For a time, the imperial palace was in chaos again. Cries and screams were almost continuous. Without Wei Hetien, the pillar, the remaining effective forces of the Wei family didn't cause any trouble under the internal strife of the spiritual guards. After a long time, the imperial palace returned to silence. "Master, there is an unexpected discovery." Xian He suddenly came, holding a young girl in his hand. Although she was dressed in an ordinary maid's costume and her face was dirty, Su Li recognized that she was Wei Zhenzhen at a glance. "Good luck." Su Li commented. Wei Zhenzhen tried hard to suppress her fear and said with hatred, "Don't talk nonsense. If you want to kill me or torture me, do as you wish." To be able to say such words, it seemed that this sixth princess was inexperienced. Su Li shook her head slightly. She flicked her fingers and shot a hidden force into Wei Zhenzhen's naguan. An orange halo instantly lit up on Wei Zhenzhen's wrist. What is this?" Wei Zhenzhen was frightened. She never knew that there was such a strange existence hidden in her body. Su Li narrowed her eyes and ordered, "Take her away and put her in solitary confinement." Light blue, dark blue, light orange. There were 3 different colors among the outsiders she had found, but they were not similar to her without exception. She still remembered that her life ring was as red as blood. It seems that more people are needed for comparison to know the law of the life ring. Thinking of this, scarlet light flashed in Su Li's eyes. She immediately turned into the transmission matrix and disappeared in the imperial palace. After a while, as Xian He took everyone to evacuate, the huge imperial palace became deserted and desolate. The wind whimpered incessantly, like a mournful wail. Only the bloodstains under the broken walls that had yet to dry were the only witnesses of that earth-shattering battle. 2 days later, the entire Tiangu city fell into an extremely strange tranquility. No one acted rashly. No one dared to go to the palace to see what had happened. The fluctuations emitted from Yu Wuhai's battle were enough to envelop the entire Tiangu city. It was a power beyond the imagination of all the families in Tiangu city. No one could survive more than a breath under this power. However, no matter how afraid these families were, time was passing. After a full 8 days, the imperial palace was as silent as a ghost town. Finally, someone gathered the courage to enter the palace to investigate. With this glance, he was terrified out of his wits, and his soul almost left his body. The message he sent out made all the clans in Tiangu City dumbfounded and shocked. The Wei family had actually been exterminated 10 days ago. No one from the royal family was left alive. The city guards were completely annihilated. Terrifying. Terrifying. In the hearts of everyone in Tiangu City, only these two words were constantly echoing. After a short period of chaos, all the clans seemed extremely obedient and quiet. It seemed that they were waiting for something. During this time, Su Li had been staying in the spiritual realm to wait for the result. There were tens of thousands of people caught alive. She couldn't confirm everyone by herself. She could only ask Xian He to send someone to do it for her, and she chose to practice herself. Compared with the outbreak of the secret method, it seemed more cost-effective to get superpower for a short period of time and break through the realm through cultivation. If she was right, if she could set foot on the 6 realms of longevity, and then break the secret method of the spiritual realm to compete with the supernatural realm, it was enough to kill the enemy 5 times in the same realm. In the whole environment, the only one Su Li was afraid of was the old ancestor of Shaoshan Palace. If she could fight 5 times, it was enough to deal with any emergency. Bang! In the addendum, there was a light sound. Su Li, who was sitting on the ground, was surrounded by stars, and then naturally occupied 20% of the genuine energy. The integration of the star force and the genuine energy, 10% is the first realm. Now I have occupied 20% of the genuine energy, and I have broken through. Su Li opened her eyes and muttered to herself. In less than 8 days, she directly stepped into the second realm from the first realm of longevity. Although it was because of the previous accumulation, such an amazing speed of breakthrough could only happen to her. After stabilizing her cultivation, Su Li gave up the idea of continuing to practice, because Xian He had been waiting outside the addendum for 2 days. Boom! The stone door made a dull sound, and Xian He immediately noticed it and greeted, "Great Master, welcome to come out of practice." Then, he suddenly found something and said with joy, "Congratulations, Great Master." The pneuma of Su Li's breakthrough was not stable yet, and he immediately noticed it. But he was not surprised because of his identity, and he didn't know that Su Li had broken through the longevity realm for less than a year. There is nothing to be happy about. Tell me the result. Su Li shook her head. Her cultivation came from the foundation, and there was nothing to be happy about. Seeing this, Xian He immediately misunderstood and secretly admired Great Master's high state of mind. When he just broke through the second realm of longevity, he couldn't be as calm as Su Li. "First Saint Lord, among the 10,000 people we caught, only a little over 100 have the bright bracelets you mentioned. Among them, 90% have light blue bracelets, 10% have dark blue bracelets, and only Wei Zhenzhen has orange bracelets." Su Li nodded and was not surprised about the result. She had already guessed the quality of the life ring. Keep the 100 people and detain them separately. Guard them carefully. Give the people of the Wei family to Fang Yuan and others. As for the relatives of other surnames, leave them to Jing Xian. She will know how to deal with them. Su Li ordered, and Xian He agreed repeatedly. He was old-fashioned, so he would not doubt Su Li's orders. After dealing with the people of the Wei family, Xian He raised his head and wanted to say something, but he hesitated and said carefully, "Great Master, the thing you asked me to do before seems to be a little troublesome." Su Li slightly raised her eyebrows. "What trouble?" Xian He said with a wry smile, "It seems that none of your friends are willing to take over the Nanjiang country." As soon as it was mentioned, Xian He thought of the scene of contact with Fang Yuan and the other 3 people, and his mouth could not help but twitch slightly. He first found Fang Yuan, but before he finished speaking, Fang Yuan turned around and left. He only said coldly, "I want to practice." Then, he didn't believe it and found Chu Qingning. This time, he said everything. Chu Qingning also seemed to be very interested in the throne of the Nanjiang country. But before he agreed, Yin Xuetong grabbed his ear and screamed away. When he arrived, he was shocked to hear Yin Xuetong's reply with a smile. Lord Xian, please tell Sister Su Li that my husband is half to the throne. Interest. I am enough for him. Tong, be gentle. You are trying to murder your husband. After a period of stunning noise, Xian he found the harmless and sunny teenager, Fong Mu. Wherever my eldest brother goes, I will go. Lord Xian, I'm really sorry. Fong Mu saluted and ran away quickly. The throne coveted by all families in the Tiangu city was like a snake or a scorpion in front of these four people. They were afraid to avoid it and get into trouble. Xian he sighed. However, as a friend of highly great master, if he really took a fancy to the throne in the secular world, he would probably doubt the eyes of highly great master, right? Thinking of this, Xian he couldn't help but laugh at his contradictory thoughts. Su Li didn't know what he was laughing at, but she didn't bother to ask more. She said indifferently, since you are not willing, then forget it. Go and make it clear to the people of the Lu family. At least in 10 years, the Nanjiang country will be used by me. Only 10 years. Xian he said in amazement, is it too little? The practitioners of the longevity realm could meditate for several years in isolation. 10 years was really too short. Su Li shook her head and smiled but said, 10 years is enough. If her plan went well, she could wait for death quietly in less than 10 years. Naturally, she didn't need the help of the Nanjiang country. If it didn't go well, she couldn't live more than 10 years. Then I will send someone to contact the Lu family. I believe that as long as they are not fools, they will not refuse. I will also secretly help the Nanjiang country to become a great help for highly great master as soon as possible. Well, you go to do your work. After this matter is finished, I should go back. In 10 days, maybe Ling Li had returned to Yunjing City. If she delayed again, there would be trouble. If the transmission matrix of the spiritual realm didn't only allow people to enter the spiritual realm from the outside world, she would like to directly arrange the transmission matrix to return to Yunjing. Goodbye, highly great master. Xian he bowed his head to salute, and then quickly retreated. His mission to stay with Su Li had been completed. Leading the spiritual horse that was fed more and more handsome, Su Li was stopped by a group of people as soon as she went out of the space of the spiritual realm. It was Fang Yuan and other 3 people. Without exception, they were surrounded by faint blood energy, which proved that more than 100 people died in their hands during this period. Su Li frowned slightly and reminded them, evil creatures are too strong. You should all go back to the Linli building to recuperate. It is the right way to eliminate the hostility. Fang Yuan nodded gently and stared at Su Li without blinking. He said, let's go back together. Su Li was slightly stunned when she heard the words. Before she responded, Chu Qingning suddenly laughed and said, I also want to go back. Why don't we go back together and have a good meal? Fang Yuan looked cold. When he was about to speak, Su Li's voice came in. That's just right. I also have something to tell you. As soon as she said that, Fang Yuan had to swallow his words and silently followed Su Li. Yin Xuetong looked at Fang Yuan's depressed expression and laughed secretly. She stretched out her hand to pull Chu Qingning and said, then we have to find a mount. Fang Mu, you go with us and help your eldest brother find one by the way. I also go? Chapter 294. In less than a quarter of an hour, Yin Xuetong and the other 2 returned with their horses. Su Li and Fang Yuan still maintained their original posture. It seemed that they didn't talk about anything. The 3 of them were all careful people. Even if they were curious about the relationship between them, they didn't say anything to make trouble. Under the leadership of Su Li, they immediately went back to Yunjing, Dan. On the 3rd day after Su Li returned to Yunjing, a seemingly inconspicuous carriage appeared at the end of the pipeline outside Yunjing. It was very quiet in the carriage. Ling Ping sat and occasionally heard the coachman shout. But he didn't have the mood to listen to the outside world at the moment. His eyes were on Ling Li's pale and thin face. He kept looking at Ling Li. Ling Emo sat beside Ling Li and looked indifferent. His face was much paler than Ling Li's. He closed his eyes to heal his internal injuries. But from his frown from time to time, it could be seen that it was not so easy for him to heal his injuries. The management of the outer city of Yunjing was very loose. The carriage drove into the city without any inspection. Finally, it stopped in front of an inconspicuous courtyard of a private house. "Master, we're here." The coachman shouted and immediately lifted the curtain to let everyone get off. Ling Li scanned the courtyard with his psychic awareness and found no spies of other forces. He was relieved and said, "Second brother, let's go in." Then he pushed the wheelchair into the courtyard, and Ling Mo followed him. After the three of them settled in the courtyard, Ling Li finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Second brother, this courtyard is very safe. No one will disturb you if you stay here to heal. I'll go back to find Su Li and let her heal you." Although there were many questions in Ling Ping's mind, Ling Mo was seriously injured at the moment. It couldn't be delayed. He immediately nodded and watched Ling Li push the wheelchair away. Seeing that Ling Mo entered the room, he sat cross-legged and continued to stabilize his injury. Ling Ping walked around the yard and muttered, "This place is so secret and quiet. I can't see the spies of other forces in Yunjing City. Is it a secluded place arranged by Mr. Li?" Although his voice was very low, Ling Mo heard it clearly with his good hearing. He couldn't help but open his eyes and looked at Ling Ping with a slightly strange look. He never thought that the master would disguise himself as Mr. Li in order to hide his real identity. Mr. Li was also a young talent. His figure was very similar to the master. It was no pressure for the master to pretend to be him. He just showed his face in front of Ling Ping and then disappeared. Ling Ping immediately believed it. The secret arrangement along the way was naturally misunderstood by Ling Ping as Mr. Li's careful arrangement. Mr. Li has saved the Ling family many times. He has a gentle temperament. What you do will not offend him. Thinking of this, Ling Mo hid his thoughts and continued to stabilize his injury. At this moment, Ling Li just returned to the Ling mansion by carriage and was immediately scolded by Chiu Meng. "Where did you go this time? You actually didn't return home for 11 whole days. If it wasn't for a servant girl who couldn't stand it anymore, I would still be kept in the dark by you. How long has it been since they got married? How can you let Su Li stay alone? Since Su Li is with you, you can't let her down. Otherwise, I will be the first to punish you." After enduring the scolding for an hour, Ling Li was sweating profusely. As soon as he arrived at the east courtyard, he saw Ling Qinglan, who looked a bit strange. However, Ling Li was anxious to cure Ling Mo. He didn't think much about the chill behind his strange back. He asked directly, "Where is Su Li?" Ling Qinglan was stunned for a moment and said, "In the wing room. Ling Mo is seriously injured. I will take Su Li to see him. You go to my mother's side." Then he directly turned the wheelchair to the wing room before Ling Qinglan agreed. Ling Qinglan's strange expression became obvious until Ling Qinglan went far away. It seems that Ling Li really didn't know that Su Li also disappeared in the days when he left. My original guess turned out to be wrong. Ling Qinglan pondered and hesitated. Since they were not in the same business, should he tell Ling Li about it? He suddenly remembered the time when Ling Li was sad. It seemed that there was only gray in his world and no color in his eyes. Well, Su Li probably felt bored and went back to her parents' home for a period of time. Ling Qinglan found a reason for himself. Now the relationship between them finally eased a little. He really didn't want to see Ling Li go back to the gloomy days. In the wing room, Su Li bowed her head to figure out the 8th hurdle of AO sword skills. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a wooden wheel turning. She raised her eyebrows slightly and put away the ancient book. She looked up and happened to meet Ling Li's slightly anxious eyes. Time seemed to be stagnant for a short time. Then, at a certain moment, they looked away at the same time. The atmosphere was slightly awkward. But soon, it was broken by Ling Li. Ling Mo is in the addendum in the outer city. He is seriously injured. Second brother is also there. Would you like to help me? Before Ling Li finished his words, he saw Su Li stand up and said without hesitation, "Let's go." Ling Li was shocked. Su Li looked slightly cold and explained, The doctor's original intention is to save the dying and help the injured. It has nothing to do with you. I see. Ling Li sighed bitterly in his heart. He shouldn't ask more. Ling Li and Su Li left the Ling mansion together. This matter naturally couldn't be hidden from Chiu Meng. But under the explanation of Ling Qinglan, it became Ling Li's apology and went out to play with Su Li. Naturally, Chiu Meng was very pleased and didn't ask more details. In the house in the outer city, Su Li's slender fingertips moved away from Ling Ping's wrist. She smiled warmly and said, "Second brother is fine. They are all superficial injuries. Although there are traces of internal injuries, the injuries are not serious. After many days of self-healing, he has almost recovered. I will give you a prescription. As long as second brother takes 3 portions every 3 days according to the prescription, he will naturally recover within 1 month. You are really a miracle-working doctor." The miracle-working doctor really inherits Qi Xianqing's unique skill. Ling Ping couldn't help but praise when he heard the words. Then he quickly stepped aside and said in a somewhat urgent voice, "It's not too late. Sister-in-law, please work hard and let Ling Mo have a look." Su Li nodded slightly and gently put her fingers on Ling Mo's wrist. She sensed the condition of his body along the tendons and veins. She immediately frowned. Ling Li and Ling Ping were nervous at the same time and asked, "How is it?" Ling Mo was still as silent as usual, but he looked at Su Li with a little more inquiry and hope. Su Li pondered for a long time and said slowly, "It's very serious." Ling Li's heart thumped and Ling Ping's face changed slightly. "How is it?" "Sister-in-law, Ling Mo was seriously injured because of me. Please cure him." Looking at Ling Mo's increasingly pale face, Su Li slightly pursed her lips and finally said, 50% of the tendons and veins in your body are broken. This is not a big deal. The most serious thing is that there have been 4 inborn forces raging in your body. These forces are entangled and exceed the limit that your genuine energy can bear now. They erode every inch of your flesh and blood. While you are constantly suppressing and stabilizing the injury, you should also suffer unimaginable pain, right? Maybe you can't even speak because of the pain. Ling Li's face finally changed. He suddenly turned to look at Ling Mo, but Ling Mo forced an ugly smile and squeezed out a sentence, "No, I can still speak." Ling Mo. Ling Ping was moved. He pointed at Ling Mo for a long time and didn't say a complete sentence. If what Su Li said was true, then in the past 10 days, Ling Mo, how did he endure it? Well, don't try to be brave anymore. Otherwise, even with your practice method, there will be a limit. Su Li's words were vague and Ling Ping was confused. But Ling Li and Ling Mo instantly understood what she meant. The next moment, Ling Mo directly raised his head and fell straight to the ground, unconscious. Ling Mo. Ling Mo was shocked and was about to rush over to check Ling Mo's situation. Su Li stopped him and said, "It's okay. He just relaxed his mind and fainted because of the pain. I will treat him next." "Second brother, you are also injured. Go and have a rest. It's enough for me to have Ling Li to help me." Ling Ping felt it was reasonable and nodded. Before leaving, he didn't forget to ask Ling Li to help Su Li well. Ling Li could only nod with a bitter smile. After Ling Ping left, Su Li's gentle expression instantly became cold. She said lightly, "The inborn force in his body can be suppressed and dispelled by your cultivation." "Of course." Ling Li nodded and pushed the wheelchair away. He walked over to help Ling Mo, who fainted. He pointed at Ling Mo's back. The genuine energy mixed with 10% of the star force immediately surged out. The 4 entangled inborn forces immediately fled like mice seeing a cat. But under the pressure of Ling Li, they were soon suppressed one by one. It was only a matter of time before they were dispelled. Seeing this, Su Li opened the needle box. She turned her palms over and over. Dense silver needles were inserted all over Ling Mo's body. Ling Li glanced at them and found that there were more than 900 needles. What kind of acupuncture was this? Ling Li was confused. His genuine energy was still in Ling Mo's body. So many needles were inserted, but he didn't find any change in Ling Mo's injury. Just when he wanted to say something, Su Li suddenly pointed at the tail of the silver needle in the center of Ling Mo's pubic region. As a touch of green light went into it, it seemed to have a chain reaction. All the silver needles began to rotate rapidly. Star force. Such pure star force. Ling Li kept recalling the scene just now. He had seen the green light on Su Li's fingertips many times before. But he was still in the inborn realm at that time. Now he broke through to the longevity realm. He knew that the green light that Su Li used to heal people was actually the star force that could only be used in the longevity realm. It's impossible. In my perception, Li's cultivation is still in the peak of the inborn realm. It can't be fake. Maybe it's because of the inheritance, Ling Mo thought for a moment. Then his attention returned to Ling Mo's body. He was shocked to find that the tendons and vessels that were originally broken were magically connected by Su Li. The human body's tendons and vessels were so complicated. What's more, 70% of Ling Mo's tendons and vessels were in a mess just now. But Su Li only took less than 1 hour to cure the disease of a disabled person in the eyes of ordinary doctors. Even Qi Xianqing couldn't do it so efficiently and quickly. Chapter 295. After an hour, the treatment came to an end. Ling Mo's broken tendons and vessels were almost healed. The remaining wood star power was enough to repair all the tendons and vessels. After placing Ling Mo in the courtyard, Su Li walked out of the room and found that Ling Ping had come over and was talking to Ling Li. This time, Mr. Li helped us again. In addition to what happened in the hunting ground last time, our Ling family owes Mr. Li too much. Brother Li, although we may never be able to repay this kindness, we must keep it in mind. I originally suspected that it was he who secretly helped us on the battlefield these years. After this, I can be sure. Next to Shizhuo, Ling Ping analyzed clearly. Ling Li looked serious and seemed to listen carefully. But from Su Li's perspective, she could see a trace of helplessness on his side face. Seeing this, Su Li smiled slightly. She came over and sat down. She called, "Second brother." Seeing her coming, Ling Ping immediately asked with concern, "Sister-in-law, thank you. How is Ling Mo?" Glancing at Ling Li, who was also concerned, Su Li pondered for a moment and slowly said, "His life is not in danger, and his tendons and vessels have all been connected. But to restore his original cultivation." Speaking of this, Su Li paused. Ling Ping suddenly changed his expression and exclaimed, "Cultivation can't be restored?" Ling Mo was only in his early 20s this year, but he had reached the peak of the inborn realm and could escape from 4 warriors of the same rank. In Ling Ping's opinion, he was a genius among geniuses. If Ling Mo lost his cultivation because of him, he was bound to feel guilty for the rest of his life. "Second brother, don't worry." Su Li's voice was soft, as if with a strange power. She soothed Ling Ping's irritation and continued, "It's not impossible to restore, but my medical skills are not good enough. I can only go to Tianji country to ask for advice from my master. Yes, there is also Dr. Qi." Ling Ping suddenly understood and said with joy, "Sister-in-law, it's not too late. I will immediately send someone to escort you to Tianji country." Before Su Li responded, Ling Li, who had been sitting beside and listening, suddenly interrupted, "I will go too." "What are you going to do?" Ling Ping frowned slightly. "It's a long journey. You can't move freely. Don't make trouble for sister-in-law. Stay at home." Ling Li wanted to refute, but after thinking for a long time, he couldn't think of a suitable reason. Second brother is right. Ling Li, you stay at home and keep an eye on Ling Mo. He will wake up soon. Don't let him fight with others before I come back." Su Li ordered. Ling Ping immediately smiled and said, "It's nothing. I will go back to the imperial court immediately. Ling Mo has no chance to fight. Don't worry." Su Li responded softly and then took a deep look at Ling Li. Ling Li sighed in his heart. He already understood what Su Li meant. Ling Mo, the head of the Shalu cult, existed not only for protection. This time, in addition to Ling Mo's accident, Ling Liuyi and other deputy heads of the Shalu cult died. 3 high-end fighters of the Shalu cult died at once. Ling Mo was an indispensable existence. Only Ling Mo could do some tasks. Now, Ling Mo couldn't fight, and there was no elder of the Yinma cult in Yunjing. He had to fight on behalf of Ling Mo. In this way, he naturally couldn't go to Tianji country with Su Li. Second brother, although you are back now, you don't know the news outside. If you send someone to escort me to Tianji country, it will be used against me. Su Li said again. Ling Ping was shocked when he heard it. He almost forgot about it. It was a big crime for the marshal to return to Yunjing without permission before the war was over. What about your safety, sister-in-law? Ling Ping hesitated and was in a dilemma. Su Li smiled and said, Second brother, don't forget that I am the daughter of a prince. I will ask my father to arrange a team of elites to escort me. In this way, no one dares to say anything. Ling Ping suddenly felt enlightened. He laughed and said, Yes, sister-in-law. Look at your second brother. He is too stupid. Then, he glanced at Ling Li, who was lost in thought, and sighed, It's a great fortune for our Ling family that you can be the daughter-in-law of our Ling family. Second brother, don't say that. It's embarrassing. Su Li blushed and whispered shyly, I'll leave now. Gather people early. The sooner Ling Mo's injury is cured, the better. Then, she quickened her pace and left the small courtyard. Ling Ping smiled more and was about to say something to Ling Li. He looked at Ling Li and found that Ling Li looked at him in a strange way. It seemed to be jealousy? Ling Ping suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He smiled angrily and said, I didn't know that you are so narrow-minded. That is your beautiful wife. She just talked with your second brother. Why are you so jealous? Ling Li suddenly realized it. He restrained his mind and smiled embarrassedly. He felt bitter in his heart. He hoped that Su Li could also talk and laugh with him. He couldn't remember how many times he was treated coldly by Su Li in the past 6 months. Li has reached the peak of the inborn realm at the beginning of the year. Her cultivation is even better than that of Qi Xianqing. Her medical skills. Is she really going to Tianji country to seek medical skills? A thought flashed in Ling Li's mind, but he soon suppressed it at the bottom of his heart. There was no arrangement of the Yinma cult in Tianji country. Even if he thought more, he couldn't verify it. It was better not to think. After Su Li returned to the Ling mansion in the carriage arranged by the Yinma cult, she went back to the Lord Rui's mansion without stopping. Seeing Su Li, who hadn't come back for half a year, Dongfang Rui was very happy. He ordered people to prepare a table of Su Li's favorite dishes. In the past 6 months, I have collected a lot of precious herbs. They are all sent to the affiliated school for you. You can go and have a look when you are free. At the dinner table, Dongfang Rui said with a smile. Su Li's action of picking up the dishes stopped in the air for a long time. Finally, she picked up the dishes to Dongfang Rui stiffly. Dongfang Rui was stunned, and then he couldn't help showing a slight excitement in his eyes. This was the first time that Su Li picked up food for him. The first time. Although Su Li recognized him as her father, Su Li's character was too strong and opinionated. Moreover, she was much more shrewd than him. Even if she cared about him very much, she wouldn't show it. For a long time, the relationship between Su Li and him was cold. They were not close. At least, Su Li couldn't lie on her father's knees like other children. Dongfang Rui couldn't even imagine that scene when he saw Su Li's calm face. But this time, Su Li's action made Dongfang Rui feel warm. He suddenly raised his head, but he didn't see Su Li's face. The girl on the opposite side was lowering her head and eating the food in the bowl. At the same time, a low and sweet voice sounded. Dad, if you think it's hard, you don't have to collect them. I seldom go to the affiliated school in the past 6 months. It's a waste to put them there. Dongfang Rui was shocked and shook his head like a rattle. It's not troublesome. I have nothing to do at ordinary times. It's quite interesting to collect herbs. I like it very much. Dongfang Rui said and grinned. He was very happy. Since collecting herbs was effective for improving the relationship between father and daughter, how could he stop? Su Li knew what Dongfang Rui was thinking. She felt a strange touch in her heart. She smiled unconsciously. Dad, it's good that you like it. Even if everything was fake, as Jing Xian said, the feeling she had at the moment couldn't be fake. At least for her, Every feeling in the last period of her life was precious. After the meal, Su Li didn't stay. She came to the affiliated school and took away the 10 guards of the Yunj sect who had been practicing. In the past half a year, she spared no effort to support them. Although the strength of the 10 guards was not as good as that of Fang Yuan and others, they reached the inborn 7th hurdle on average. They improved by 3 hurdles in half a year. It was almost a rocket. As for Yun Yi, the captain of the 10 guards, he reached the early stage of the inborn 9th hurdle with the help of Su Li's Wudao stone. He was only a little weaker than Fang Yuan. After Yun Yi sent the message, Su Li and others in the Linli building almost set off at the same time. They met in the ruined temple outside the city at night and changed the road together. Naturally, there were many spies in Yunjing City following them. But Su Li and her team of more than 10 people were sensitive. They soon got rid of all surveillance and went straight to Tianji country. Although Tianji country was adjacent to Dahan country, Yunjing City itself was closer to Nanjiang country. Therefore, Su Li and others set off from Yunjing City, and the journey was very long. Although they had the help of the spiritual horse, it took them half a month to reach the capital of Tianji country, Tantai City. On the spacious street with heavy traffic, the shouts were endless. All kinds of machine-operated vehicles passed by everywhere. Almost every family in the roadside shops used the machine-operated skills. All kinds of delicate mechanisms made Chu Qingning enjoy them. Tianji country deserves its reputation. These things are too delicate. Chu Qingning led the horse and looked at it while walking. He was amazed. When the others heard Chu Qingning's words, they rarely showed approval. This group of more than a dozen travel-worn people was Su Li's team. Su Li glanced at the dim light in the sky and said, "It's late. Let's find a place to stay first and then talk about other things." "Miss, the Tianji Inn is the best inn in Tianji country. It is said that except for people, everything in it is related to the machine-operated skills. It is very unique. Therefore, the accommodation fee is very high. It is said that it can reach 1,000 taels per night." Yun Yi pointed to the tallest wooden building in the distance and said, obviously he knew the situation of Tianji country. Su Li nodded and said, "Let's go there." The drinks of the Linli building were popular in the north. Now her money had already become a pile of numbers, which could not be used up. The Tianji Inn was the face of Tantai City. When Su Li and others stepped into the door, they didn't say anything. A very clever waiter ran to them with a very natural smile on his face. "Miss, do you want to have a meal or stay here? Our inn not only has exquisite rooms, but also excellent food." Our Miss Yun Yi stepped forward. Before he had time to answer, he suddenly heard an extremely sharp voice behind him. The voice was so coquettish that Chu Qingning got goosebumps just by listening to it. Chapter 296. The Tianji Inn was the pride of the people in Tantai City. Therefore, when someone criticized the inn, many guests who were eating in the inn immediately raised their heads angrily and looked toward the direction of the voice. With a single glance, many people who wanted to reprimand him immediately gave up. Even the noise in the hall became much quieter. Instead, it was replaced by endless whispers. "It turns out to be her. No wonder, since the Tianji Inn was given to the 4th prince by His Majesty, Tut." While they were talking, Su Li had settled the account. Then she turned her head and her indifferent eyes fell on the woman with heavy makeup who was very fancy. The woman looked about 30 years old, and her appearance was very ordinary. Coupled with the greasy makeup, she was even more annoying. However, judging from the jewelry on her head, she should be from a wealthy family. Moreover, Su Li glanced at the faint fear of the guests in the inn, and she had a vague guess in her heart. At this time, the woman with heavy makeup saw Su Li's delicate and small face, and a touch of jealousy appeared in her eyes. She immediately sneered and scolded, "Hey, where does this little vixen come from? Aren't you afraid that you can't stand so many men when you go out?" As soon as the words came out, Fang Yuan's face instantly became cold. His palm touched the hilt of the sword. When he was about to take action, he was stopped by a small movement of Su Li. However, Su Li stopped Fang Yuan, but failed to stop Chu Qingning's mouth. Seeing that the woman insulted Su Li, Chu Qingning was immediately angry. He pointed at the nose of the woman with heavy makeup and scolded, "Where does this ugly woman come from? Not only does she have a donkey face, but her mouth is also so stinky. You should see clearly that this is the Tianji Inn, a place to eat. If you can't help but want to spit shit, go to the latrine quickly. Don't be disgusting." Chu Qingning was so eloquent that the woman with heavy makeup didn't have a chance to interrupt his smooth scolding. When she came to her sense and understood the meaning of Chu Qingning's words, she was so angry that her face turned green. "How dare you? Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like this?" Seeing that the woman with heavy makeup was so angry that she couldn't speak clearly, many people in the inn secretly held back their laughter and felt very happy. At the same time, they cast a pitiful look at Su Li and others. This round of scolding was satisfying, but this woman was not easy to deal with. The group of young people was going to be out of luck. "How would I know who you are? There's nothing written on your face." Chu Qingning rolled his eyes and had no scruples. It was Su Li who stood behind him. He didn't need to be afraid of a nobody. After the incident of Nanjiang country, Su Li's strength had risen to the level of a sect or even a country. For example, an elephant could trample dozens of ants to death casually. How could it be interested in understanding what ants were thinking? The woman with heavy makeup trembled and her pretty face was pale. She pointed at Chu Qingning, who was busy and didn't say a complete sentence. She stamped her feet and screamed. He cursed angrily, "You bunch of trash, what are you waiting for? Capture him. I want him to know the price of offending me." Although the guards behind her didn't like the woman's orders, they still acted because of the orders from above. This action immediately shocked all the people in the inn who were watching the fun. Inborn realm. These guards turned out to be all strong practitioners of the inborn realm. No wonder the woman with heavy makeup was so confident. "Surrender, and I can make the decision to let you suffer less," the leading middle-aged guard said coldly, and his big palm containing the inborn genuine energy shrouded Su Li. He was experienced and could naturally see that the person in charge of this group was the girl of 16 or 17. But before this palm hit, a strong wind suddenly shot out from the second floor of the inn and forcibly dispersed the middle-aged guard's force. Sensing the extremely condensed genuine energy in the strong wind, the middle-aged guard's face changed slightly. He didn't dare to attack Su Li again and turned back to withdraw from the door of the inn. The other guards were not so lucky. They were hit by the strong wind and flew out of the door with a scream. Bang! The woman with heavy makeup didn't know what happened. Suddenly, a bright red palm print was thrown on her face. She was directly thrown to the ground. Immediately, half of her face swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Who hit me?" After being slapped in front of so many people, the woman with heavy makeup was stunned for a moment, and then she let out an extremely shrill howl. But before she could make a scene, a cold voice in her ear instantly woke her up, and she felt cold all over. "You can't be seen in public. Get out of here." This voice was so familiar. It was that princess. Why was she here? The woman with heavy makeup was full of fear and no longer arrogant. She knelt down with a plop and kept kowtowing, "I know I'm wrong. I'll get out now, I'll get out now." As she said, she gritted her teeth and actually hugged her legs and rolled out of the inn. She left with the guards of the inborn realm, as if there were ghosts chasing behind them. This series of changes happened in a very short time. The incident was over before everyone had time to react. Then, a shopkeeper who looked like a scholar suddenly came down from upstairs and stood in front of Su Li. He said respectfully, "Prince, the two princes upstairs invite you to have a chat." Su Li's eyes flashed and she immediately chuckled, "Please lead the way." The shopkeeper was immediately flattered and said, "Not at all. Your Highness, this way please." Someone in the lobby recognized the shopkeeper and immediately exclaimed in a low voice. It turned out that the shopkeeper also had a great background. No wonder he was not afraid of He Luomei. Second floor, Tianzi private room. Su Li pushed the door and walked in with Fang Yuan. As for others, they were waiting outside. Although the private room was large, it would leave a bad impression on the people inside if they went in together. Passing through the empty hall, Su Li lifted the silk curtain and came to the stairs on the second floor. Finally, she saw two people sitting on both sides of the round mahogany table. A man and a woman. The man was Tan Tai Yu, while the woman was unfamiliar. Her facial features were somewhat similar to Tan Tai Yu's. Her every move exuded elegance. "Junior sister apprentice, it's really you?" Seeing Su Li coming in, Tan Tai Yu was surprised and said, "Just now on the first floor, I couldn't see you clearly. I thought I was wrong." The woman looked at Su Li with interest and didn't speak. Su Li smiled sweetly and said, "I haven't seen you for a long time. You are more elegant than before. You are the last apprentice of my master. Don't make fun of me." Although Tan Tai Yu said so, the more brilliant smile on his face revealed his inner thoughts. Fang Yuan saw that they were not hostile. After glancing at Tan Tai Yu, he left silently and stood outside the silk curtain like the most loyal guard. When Tan Tai Yu saw Fang Yuan's action, a touch of appreciation flashed in his eyes. Then he pulled Su Li to sit down and said with a smile, "I almost forgot to introduce you. This is my half-sister, Tan Tai Mingyue. She is the second eldest in the family. She saved you just now. Otherwise, you would be in danger. Although you brought a lot of people, in front of a warrior of the inborn realm, more people won't be an advantage." Su Li smiled slightly and didn't explain. She said to the elegant woman, "Thank you for saving me, second princess." Tan Mingyue smiled and said with a smile in her eyes, "Fourth brother, you are wrong. Even if I don't help you, your little junior sister apprentice will be fine. The cultivation of the one who spoke arrogantly just now is not lower than mine." Tan Tai Mingyue said and looked at Fang Yuan, who stood outside the curtain with only a silhouette. This person could follow Su Li in, but the one who exposed his cultivation could only stand outside the door. This alone was enough to expose a lot of information. Before Chu Qingning revealed his pneuma, he was no different from the guards around Su Li who exposed their cultivation at the late stage. Tan Tai Mingyue also thought that Su Li couldn't deal with He Luomei, so she took action. But now, when Tan Tai Mingyue thought of the team of more than a dozen people, she couldn't help but be shocked. She couldn't help but have a ridiculous idea. Tan Tai Yu was slightly shocked when he heard it. The second sister's cultivation was the highest among the descendants of the royal family. She reached the inborn 8th hurdle. The guards around Su Li could reach that level. Even if Dongfang Rui was powerful, it was impossible to win over such a young warrior of the late stage of the inborn realm. "Junior sister apprentice." Tan Tai Yu hesitated and said. Su Li smiled and nodded slightly. "Second princess, you really have a good eye." Tan Tai Yu immediately didn't dare to speak. He also thought the same as Tan Tai Mingyue, and Su Li didn't seem to deny it. "By the way, senior fellow apprentice, is master still here? I have some important things to tell him." Su Li changed the topic, and the stagnant atmosphere in the room immediately relaxed. Tan Tai Yu was also one of the best princes in the royal family. He calmed down quickly and said with a smile, "Of course, but master lives in the lonely mountain outside the city. It is very remote. If you find him by yourself, I am afraid that it will take a lot of time. I will take you there." Su Li nodded and said, "Thank you, senior fellow apprentice. Don't mention it." Tan Tai Yu shook his head and smiled. "You still regard me as an outsider as before. But it's good. I am in an awkward situation now. If you live in the prince's mansion, there will be trouble. You can stay in Tianji Inn. It is my property now. It doesn't matter how long you live." Su Li responded and turned away. She didn't ask more about the so-called awkward situation. After she left, Tan Tai Mingyue took a sip of wine and said, "Why don't you ask her for help? I can see that although this woman is not close to you, you are from the same sect after all. If the power in her hand can be used by you, your current predicament is nothing at all." Tan Tai Yu smiled bitterly. "Second sister, things are not as simple as you think. I don't want junior sister apprentice to get involved in this mess." "Then you are willing to let me get involved in this mess?" Tan Tai Mingyue rolled her eyes. Tan Tai Yu quickly apologized and toasted, which made her giggle. Well, you are my dearest brother. Come on, drink with me again, and then you go to accompany your junior sister apprentice. Bang! There was a clear sound of wine glasses touching. Tan Tai Mingyue smiled and her eyes were meaningful. Silly brother, although Su Li looked simple as a woman, she could feel that this woman was absolutely not simple. Chapter 297. Soon after Su Li left the room, Tan Tai Yu followed her with people. As a prince of a country, although he was not the first crown prince, his status was still respected. There were many guards of the inborn realm following him. Even if none of them reached the inborn fifth hurdle, the young warriors of the inborn realm could follow them, which proved that they had potential. Tan Tai Yu glanced at the large group of people behind Su Li and hesitated. Junior sister apprentice, the machine-operated dragon vehicle is not big. With so many people, I'm afraid. Su Li smiled and motioned him to be calm. She whispered in Fang Yuan's ear. Then Chu Qingning and others immediately left with the waiter, leaving only Fang Yuan and Yun Yi. Tan Tai Yu breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "It's much more convenient. Junior sister apprentice, don't worry. I will take care of your safety here. I will never let you get hurt." Su Li nodded with a sweet smile and nodded obediently. "Of course, I believe you." But Tan Tai Yu laughed heartily, and then took Su Li and others to the machine-operated dragon vehicle. It was a machine-operated beast with a height of 1.5 people, 3 meters long and 1 meter wide. The whole surface was covered with cyan scales, and a pair of dragon eyes were bright as if it were a living creature. Seeing such a majestic vehicle, Yun Yi, who was behind Su Li, couldn't help but exclaim, "Is this the machine-operated dragon vehicle behind you?" Tan Tai Yu was always modest and polite, showing a little pride on his face. This is one of the symbols of Tianji. Only when you come to Tantai City in person and are received by the royal family can you see it. At the moment of talking, everyone had already boarded the machine-operated dragon vehicle. The dragon vehicle made a low roar and went out of the city with a beautiful arc like a swimming dragon. In this season, Tantai City was very hot. Many ice cages were placed in the dragon vehicle, which was quiet and cool. Through the glass mirror of the dragon vehicle, Su Li could clearly see the bustling scene outside the city. She had never been to Tianji City in the previous life. Now she saw such a magical machine-operated dragon vehicle for the first time. She couldn't help but be slightly surprised and sighed. "Senior fellow apprentice, the dragon vehicle is really extraordinary. It is much more comfortable than the carriage. It would be good if such a vehicle could be introduced into Dahan country." Tan Tai Yu shook his head helplessly and said with a smile, "Junior sister apprentice, you are not the only one who has this idea. Everyone who comes to Tianji country will have the same idea. Even we often imagine the interests represented by the machine-operated dragon carriage. But the manufacturing method of the machine-operated dragon carriage is the top secret of our royal family. Only Father knows it. And I don't know why Father forbids the machine-operated dragon carriage to enter other countries." "I see." When Su Li nodded, her psychic awareness had quietly invaded the core of the dragon carriage. In her opinion, it was easy for any practitioner of the longevity realm to figure out the structure of the dragon carriage. But after so many years, why had no one spread the manufacturing method of the dragon carriage? After all, the resources represented by the dragon carriage were not a little bit. Even a practitioner in the longevity realm would be tempted. Only with enough resources could a practitioner cultivate faster. This was an unchanging truth since ancient times. When she reached the longevity realm, her psychic awareness had been transformed. Even the special materials that could weaken psychic awareness could not stop Su Li's exploration. In just a few seconds, Su Li's psychic awareness penetrated into the core structure of the hearse. All of a sudden, her eyes slightly narrowed, and her spiritual sense abruptly stopped. It's really weird. The last key place in the core structure was covered with a layer of faint gray fog. The power contained in the gray fog was not strong. If she broke through forcibly, the gray fog could not stop her. But just the thought of breaking through the gray fog in her heart made her feel uneasy. It seemed that as long as she broke through, something extremely bad would happen. After hesitating for a while, Su Li's psychic awareness circled around the gray fog and finally slowly withdrew. I can't afford to delay my current affairs. There is no need to make trouble. Her eyes flashed, and the idea of exploration immediately faded. On one side, Tan Taiyu was busy introducing the customs of Tianji country to Su Li, and he did not notice her abnormality. Lonely Mountain was far from Tantai City. The dragon carriage traveled for half a day. It didn't arrive at the foot of Lonely Mountain until the evening. Tan Taiyu took Su Li to a bamboo house built by the water in the mountain, but he didn't see Qi Xianqing. Did the master go fishing? Tan Taiyu looked around, but he didn't see anyone. He couldn't help but wonder. I think the master has left here. Su Li wiped the table with her fingertips and immediately drew a clear line. The table has accumulated dust. I'm afraid that the master has left for more than a month. Tan Taiyu's heart sank. A month ago, it was the time when he took over Tianji Inn. He was so busy. He didn't expect that the master had left silently. He frowned. Junior sister apprentice, you came to ask the master for help. What should we do? Seeing the apology between Tan Taiyu's eyebrows, Su Li shook her head and said, It doesn't matter. The master left suddenly. It's not your fault. I will find another way. Tan Taiyu was silent. He saw that Su Li was not happy, but he felt that the junior sister apprentice must be very disappointed in her heart, but she didn't show it. Thinking of the relationship between the junior sister apprentice and himself, he hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth and said, Junior sister apprentice, I will take you to father. He must know where the master is. When she said that, Tan Taiyu felt a trace of regret in his heart, but it was soon replaced by firmness. Su Li was slightly stunned and immediately reacted. She glanced at Fang Yuan and Yun Yi. The latter immediately understood and retreated. Until they couldn't hear Su Li and Tan Taiyu's conversation, Yun Yi couldn't help but worry. What should we do? The miracle-working Dr. Qi is not here. It's hard for the miss to explain when she goes back. Fang Yuan smiled and said lightly, Now, do you still think that Su Li came here to treat Ling Imo? Yun Yi was shocked and said, Isn't it? Fang Yuan looked at the two people who were talking in the mountain and said slowly, Her medical skills have long surpassed Qi Xianqing's. Among all the people, he was the first to follow Su Li, and only he knew some secrets. For example, in the early years, Su Li was good at poison, but Qi Xianqing knew nothing about it. Su Li's medical skills were not taught by Qi Xianqing. Yun Yi understood the implied meaning of Fang Yuan's words. He was shocked and lost the ability to speak for a while. When Fang Yuan was still guessing the real purpose of Su Li's coming to Tianji country, Tan Taiyu told a secret of the imperial palace that even the ministers of Tianji country didn't know. In fact, father has been worried about my mother's strange disease over the years. When talking about his mother, Tan Taiyu's eyes showed sadness. It turned out that Tan Taiyu's mother, concubine Yin, was the most favored concubine of Emperor Tan Tai Feng of Tianji country. The empress was just a commodity sent by the ministers to stabilize the national conditions. If it weren't for considering the face of the imperial palace, Tan Tai Feng didn't even bother to go to the empress's bedchamber and stayed in concubine Yin's palace at other times. Therefore, as the children of concubine Yin, he and the second princess Tan Tai Mingyue were favored by Tan Tai Feng. Later, concubine Yin contracted a strange disease and had been in a coma. Tan Tai Feng was abnormal and forbade any imperial doctor who treated concubine Yin to leak the news. Otherwise, he would be executed. Later, he secretly looked for famous doctors in the secular world and the martial arts circle to treat concubine Yin secretly. But after so many years, concubine Yin still didn't wake up. If it weren't because she was still breathing, Tan Taiyu would think that his mother was dead. However, it was a little strange that for more than 10 years, Tan Tai Feng was getting older, but concubine Yin still maintained her young appearance. It seemed that time couldn't leave any trace on her. Now my identity is sensitive, so it's not easy to enter the imperial palace. But if I follow the secret line of father, I will definitely not be found by other princes. I think with my identity, I will be scolded by father at most. Tan Tai Yu pretended to be relaxed and said. Then he seemed to think of something. He didn't give Su Li a chance to refuse and quickly said, "It's not too late. Before my whereabouts are exposed to eldest brother, I will take you into the imperial palace." Seeing that he said so, Su Li could only swallow her refusal and nodded. "Thank you, senior fellow apprentice." She could easily cure Ling Mo's injury, but in order to come to Tianji country, she specially left an excuse so that Ling Mo's meridians would not be hindered in a month. The ultimate goal of her coming to Tianji country was to deal with Tianji country as she did with Nanjiang country within a month. But now, with the help of Tan Tai Yu, the time was immediately shortened by countless times. And according to Tan Tai Yu's words, Tan Tai Feng seemed to be a good father, which made her have other ideas. Maybe, I don't need to use the spiritual realm this time. Thinking of this, Tan Tai Yu had returned home with everyone and rushed to the imperial palace overnight. The imperial palace's gate wall was vermilion, but one place was really dark. There were countless inborn seniors guarding around it. As soon as Tan Tai Yu's dragon carriage stopped, he received a lot of attention. After perceiving the pneuma of Su Li and Fang Yuan, the hidden eyes immediately became sharp. Tan Tai Yu got off the dragon carriage and walked quickly to the gate of the courtyard with a serious face. He whispered, "Junior sister apprentice is the last disciple of the master. Now she is better than the master. I bring her here, so I have some confidence." After this sentence, the gate did not respond. Tan Tai Yu frowned and could only say again, "Mammy, please make an exception. I can't hurt my mother." After this sentence, Su Li heard the breath in the door paused, and then after the sound of the door bolt being pulled, the courtyard gate finally opened, and an old woman with a wrinkled face came out. She glanced at Su Li and others, and a trace of anger flashed in her turbid eyes, but she didn't lose her temper. She glanced at Tan Tai Yu coldly, and the old voice sounded in his ear. "You take care of yourself." Tan Tai Yu stopped breathing, nodded slightly, and quickly took Su Li into the courtyard. Just at the moment when they stepped into the courtyard, another dragon carriage galloped over. Before the dragon carriage stopped, Tan Tai Mingyue got off. Seeing that the courtyard gate had been slowly closed, the eagerness on her face immediately became extremely ugly. Chapter 298. When Tan Tai Mingyue was upset, a mighty general in black scale armor approached and asked in a deep voice, "Second princess, are you also here for the young female doctor?" When Tan Tai Mingyue saw him, a strange expression flashed across her brows, and she exclaimed, "Commander Su, why are you here?" Commander Su was silent for a moment and said, "Second princess, you are wrong. We have been guarding the queen all the time and never slacked off." Tan Tai Mingyue was completely surprised because Commander Su was not an ordinary commander of the Imperial Army, but the most elite underground force of her father. He was also the foundation of the Tan Tai family, the Black Scale Army. But now, Commander Su, who was supposed to protect the stability of the country, had been guarding her mother for more than 10 years. Didn't it mean that it was not the Empress but the Queen who was the mistress of the Tan Tai family? There was a trace of warmth in Tan Tai Mingyue's eyes. Although she knew that her father loved her mother deeply and sought medical treatment for her for more than 10 years, she did not expect that her father's affection for her mother could reach such a level. "Second princess, our duties are top secret. It is enough for only you, even your brother, to know this matter." As Commander Su spoke, he looked towards the courtyard doors that were still closed. His eyes turned cold. If I had met the fourth prince in the past, then perhaps I might have considered it. But now, if it weren't for the fact that he is the queen's own son, then his actions today are enough reason for me to act. Commander Su smiled coldly. Tan Tai Yu's purpose was obvious. He clearly used this line to let the girl enter the palace secretly. Tan Tai Yu's talent was far less than Tan Tai Mingyue's. He was more partial to Tan Tai Mingyue. Now he saw Tan Tai Yu's selfishness, which made him even more unhappy. Tan Tai Mingyue saw that Commander Su was so explicit, and her face was unnatural for a moment. After all, Tan Tai Yu was her closest brother. So, even if she was very unhappy with Su Li, she could only help her at this moment. "Commander Su, you've misunderstood me. Su Li is not ignorant and incompetent, but the last disciple of the miracle-working Dr. Qi. Her talent in the medical circle has been extraordinary since she was a child. Now many years have passed, maybe she can surpass her master. My mother has been in a coma for so many years. I am afraid that my brother is anxious, so... Dan Tai Mingyue's words were reasonable and well-founded. Finally, the coldness on Commander Su's face eased a little. He said slowly, "Since second princess said so, I will believe fourth prince this time." "Thank you, Commander Su." "Second princess, you're too polite." After exchanging some pleasantries, Dan Tai Mingyue glanced at the silent door. Her eyes flashed with helplessness, and then she walked away. If there was no sufficient reason, even she could not enter from this door. She wanted to stop them before Tan Taiyu entered, but it was a pity that she was one step late. At this moment, in the black-walled courtyard, Su Li followed Tan Taiyu alone and passed through heavy guards. Finally, they came to a bedchamber that exuded a faint fragrance of medicine. Fang Yuan and Yun Chen were stopped when they passed through heavy guards. "This is the place where my mother rests. Go in. Anyway, you have to pretend. Then I will take you to see my father." Tan Taiyu transmitted the sounds secretly. Su Li nodded gently. Without hesitation, she lifted the gauze curtain and stepped into the inner bedchamber. When the maid in the palace saw Su Li coming in alone, she couldn't help but look surprised. But she was obviously well-trained and didn't make any radical moves. She walked to Su Li with light steps and saluted, "Doctor, you have 2 hours for diagnosis and treatment. After that, I will clean the body of Her Highness." Su Li said softly, "You can leave. I can't allow outsiders to disturb my treatment." The maid saluted and left the inner hall without staying. In the past years, various miracle-working doctors who came to treat Her Highness made similar requests. She had long been used to it. After the maid left, the inner hall was completely quiet. Only the breeze through the window blew in the ears from time to time, making a slight sound. In the center of the inner hall, on the luxurious soft gauze bed, a woman in palace dress who looked no more than 27 or 28 years old was sleeping quietly. According to the calculation, concubine Yin was over 40 years old. Time really didn't leave any trace. Is it possible that she accidentally ate some youth-retaining spiritual fruit and fell asleep? Thinking of this, Su Li walked to the bed and gently put her fingertips on concubine Yin's wrist. In an instant, a strange feeling rose from the bottom of her heart. Su Li just closed her eyes and suddenly opened them. She was shocked. Clear. Unprecedentedly clear. She could actually sense all the changes in concubine Yin's body, from the bones to the tendons and even the sound of the blood flowing in the blood vessels. As long as she wanted to hear it, the sound would be immediately magnified. Why is it like this? I have recovered a lot of memory, but I have never seen her. Su Li was shocked and silent. As she thought, her perception had reached the awareness sea of concubine Yin. It was a boundless gray. A sense of oppression was transmitted into Su Li's body along the perception of her psychic awareness, which immediately made her feel unprecedented pressure. The power of suppression? Su Li's eyes were confused for a moment, and suddenly said a word that she didn't understand. When this word came out of her mouth, she suddenly woke up and then frowned tightly. Her mind was in a mess. The power of suppression? It was strange and familiar. It was strange because she didn't have any joy about it in her memory, but familiar. Su Li guessed that it was mostly the memory brought by the illusion. Did that secret method let me inherit a trace of the memory of reincarnation mirror? Su Li's thoughts turned quickly, and she quickly figured out a lot of doubts. Then she looked at concubine Yin in a different way. Suppression. What kind of existence needed the suppression of reincarnation mirror? The answer seemed to be obvious. Su Li's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. Looking at the beautiful woman who breathed evenly and quietly on the bed, she was about to confirm her thoughts. Suddenly, a low and deep voice came from the hall. "Outsider, you are right. Gu is not a native creature of the illusion." "Who?" The voice came so suddenly that it sounded in Su Li's ears. Su Li's pupils suddenly contracted, and she turned around abruptly. Suddenly, She saw a middle-aged man in a yellow robe with an unshaven beard standing not far behind her. Looking at the outline of his face, it was not difficult to see that he must have been an extremely handsome man when he was young. Su Li saw the golden dragon embroidered on the yellow robe, and her eyes were slightly gloomy. After a moment of silence, she said, "Tan Tai Fong." The middle-aged man laughed when he heard the words. "In this life, you are the first one who dares to call my name directly. However, as the half-owner of Reincarnation Mirror, you are qualified." Su Li's eyes were gloomy, and she laughed at herself. "What kind of owner am I? Senior Tentai, don't laugh at me. At this time, you know to call me Senior. It seems that you have guessed my identity. Did Jing Xen tell you that?" The middle-aged man revealed a lot of secrets, which made Su Li more sure of his identity. She immediately nodded and said, "If I guessed right, you are one of the ancient existences in the illusion like the old ancestor of Shaoshan Palace?" Shaoshan Palace? When Tan Tai Fong heard these 3 words, he was stunned. He seemed to think of someone, and said with a faint smile, "That old thing dares to call himself a god? He really dares to say that?" Su Li's heart moved when she heard the words of Tan Tai Fong. It seemed that he was very disdainful of the old ancestor of Shaoshan Palace. "Little girl, your situation seems to be very bad now, and it seems that you are coming for me. Why don't we make a deal?" Su Li raised her eyebrows and said respectfully, "I'd like to hear the details." Tan Tai Fong laughed, waved his hand to get 2 chairs, and asked Su Li to sit down. His eyes fell on concubine Yin, and a touch of affection flashed on his face. "Use your authority as the half-owner to let my cultivation companion not be suppressed by the illusion. At least she can live normally in the illusion. I will agree to any request you have." When Su Li heard the words, she immediately weighed in her mind. When she just checked, she had already found that if she used the secret method to wake up concubine Yin, it was just a matter of thinking, and the consumption of foundation was far less than fighting with others. However, since she saw an ancient existence, her mind immediately became active, and she was no longer satisfied with the previous goal. After thinking for a moment, Su Li raised her head and looked directly at Tan Tai Fong. "Senior, I agree to your request, and I want you to help me once when it is necessary." Tan Tai Feng's face darkened when he heard the words, and his smile faded a lot. "Little girl, do you really not know the price of us fighting in the illusion? Or are you sent by that old guy, Mirror Spirit, to show off?" With the change of Tan Tai Feng's mood, Su Li immediately felt a pressure. In her special state now, she actually sensed a trace of deep hatred from it. Chaotic thoughts flashed through her mind, and Su Li felt more and more suffocating pressure. She had to stop thinking, and braced herself to say, "Senior, I don't understand what you mean. Isn't Mirror Spirit Jing Xian? You said she is a little girl, but why do you say she is an old guy? It seems that you really don't understand." Tan Tai Fong restrained a trace of breath in time, took a deep look at Su Li and said, "Yes, you are just a remnant soul that is about to die. I'm afraid that the old guy doesn't even want to see you." Remnant soul. Su Li was silent. Yes, she couldn't return to the real world now, and she would dissipate at a certain moment. This was the soul with a trace of memory. But even so, she still wanted to find out what secrets were hidden in the reincarnation mirror. Tan Tai Fong saw this and couldn't help laughing. He finally put away the last trace of temptation and sighed, "Little girl, if the little girl Jing Xen is the real mirror spirit, how can she suppress so many ancient existences? She is just the agent chosen by the real mirror spirit on a whim." Su Li was shocked and blurted out, "If the real mirror spirit loses interest, what will she do?" Chapter 299. What answered Tan Tai Fong was silence. After the silence, a free and easy smile appeared on the girl's face. She said indifferently, "Since the outcome has been doomed, why should I waste time on myself? What I think now is just that they can have a better future." Looking at the girl in front of him, who was many years younger than him, showing calmness in the face of life and death, even Tan Tai Fong, who had lived for many years, couldn't help but show a stunned look. Then, a rare admiration appeared on his face, and he sighed, If you don't die, you will definitely be one of the leaders of this generation of Qingshui Circle. It's a pity that you ran into this monster. Tan Tai Feng didn't continue. Even if he had been impressed by Su Li in his heart, what was the use of saying more to a person who had no future? Su Li was silent. Was Qingshui Circle the name of the real world outside? In the memory of the outside world, she only knew Jiuzhou region. In her opinion, Jiuzhou region had more than 20 major cultivation sects and countless secular countries. It was already boundless. How big was Qingshui Circle? It must be the boundless beauty of mountains and rivers. Unfortunately, she had no chance to see it again. Sighing secretly, Su Li restrained her lost mood and looked up, saying, "Senior, I agree to the deal you said. I only have one request. Can you lend me the power of Tianji country for 10 years? She didn't mention the matter of letting Tan Tai Feng take action. Although it was only a short contact, she had already understood that Tan Tai Feng was not a very difficult person to talk to. But her request just made him change his face, so the price of taking action must be unbearable for him. Although Tan Tai Feng tried his best to suppress it, she still sensed the suppression force that was more powerful than that of concubine Yin. Once she took action, it would lead to the backlash of the suppression force. Su Li guessed that Tan Tai Feng was likely to sleep forever like Ingo. Sure enough, when Tan Tai Feng heard that Su Li changed her request, he smiled without thinking. It's easy. Just take it. It doesn't matter if it's 10 or 20 years. It's not too late to take it back when you leave me. Tianji country was just a force he created for concubine Yin in order to comply with the rules of the illusion. Now Su Li could reduce the suppression force on Ingo, so Tianji country was naturally useless to him. After reaching an agreement, Su Li didn't hesitate and immediately took action. The process of dispelling the suppression force was very simple. In just 10 minutes, concubine Yin's pale face became ruddy at a speed visible to the naked eye. But it seemed that there was still some time before she woke up. Tan Tai Feng saw this change, and a faint excitement appeared in his eyes. Enough. Although the suppression force was only reduced by 20%, Ji's strength is enough to resist the remaining 80%. Hearing this, Su Li finally breathed a sigh of relief. In this way, the matter of Tianji country was solved without bloodshed. After the excitement, Tan Tai Feng quickly regained his composure. At his realm, unless it was something that truly made him ecstatic, he would rarely show his emotions on his face. Su girl, I will lend you the power of Tianji country. But in order not to let the mirror spirit notice the strangeness, I will let you take over the throne, and then give him some instructions. What do you think? Chin, I will lend you the power of Tianji country. But in order not to let the mirror spirit notice the strangeness, I will let you take over the throne, and then give some instructions to him. What do you think? Su Li nodded slightly and agreed. Senior, you are considerate. I have no objection. But when you give instructions to senior fellow apprentice can you help to hide it and let him lend his power to the Linli building for the time being? However, since you asked me to do so, I will do it. Speaking of which, I have the idea of making Tan Tai Yu the crown prince. Your appearance saves me the time of hesitation. Su Li was slightly stunned when she heard the words. She thought for a moment and asked, because of Master Qi Xianqing? Tan Tai Feng shook his head. On the contrary, if it weren't for Qi Xianqing, I wouldn't have to hesitate. Speaking of this, Tan Tai Feng's slightly sharp eyes swept over Su Li. In the latter's doubt, he slowly said, Girl, this deal is fair for you, but for me, it is a bargain. I never owe anyone a favor in my life, so I advise you not to have anything to do with the people of Ghost Clan. Otherwise, the result will be more serious than death. Ghost Clan? Su Li frowned. Perhaps it was because the existence of Tan Tai Feng was too old. Every word he said contained a lot of information. She hadn't digested it, but a ghost clan that she had never heard of was involved. Ghost Clan. It is the evilest clan in the world and is hated by everyone in Qingshui Circle. They seem to be no different from the human clan, but each ghost clan has a very terrible special ability. As long as they grow up, even the supreme master of a circle can't do anything to them. Tan Tai Feng seemed to be lost in memory. He looked very serious, and then he said something shocking. Qi Xianqing, he is a ghost clan. Su Li was slightly shocked and she couldn't believe it. How could? Thinking of the contact with Qi Xianqing in this life, she didn't think that an old man at the peak of the inborn realm would be a formidable ghost clan in Tan Tai Feng's words. You don't need to panic too much. Qi Xianqing is just a lost ghost clan. He has been suppressed by the reincarnation mirror for too long, and his power is almost all lost. He has long forgotten who he is and how to use the talent of Ghost Clan. Now he only has an obsession. What obsession? In Su Li's mind, Qi Xianqing's tired face of running around constantly these years, and there was a strange emotion in her heart. For revival. Tan Tai Feng's expression was complicated. Although they were enemies, he couldn't help but feel sad for Qi Xianqing's death. I have personally investigated the Ghost Valley, and it has no connection with the Ghost Clan. Qi Xianqing has long forgotten what he wants to revive. Now he runs around for the Ghost Valley just because there is a word, ghost, in it. Su Li was silent, and a sense of relief rose in her heart. Although she had more doubts after listening to Tan Tai Yu's words, she finally solved a puzzle. No matter in the previous life or this life, Qi Xianqing's age had long exceeded the limit, but he still lived well. It turned out that it was not because he took any elixir to prolong his life, but because he was an extremely transcendent existence. Even if time had worn away his memory, he still couldn't die. At the end of the night, there was a glimmer of light in the morning. Su Li quietly left the imperial palace and met with Tan Tai Yu. Junior sister apprentice, are you okay? Tan Tai Yu didn't care about the surveillance of the surrounding imperial guards, and he nervously transmitted the sound in low voice. Father came suddenly, and I couldn't inform you. Hearing Tan Tai Yu's words of concern, Su Li came back from her chaotic thoughts and temporarily restrained her thoughts. She shook her head and smiled. It doesn't matter. The attitude of the emperor is very kind, and the disease of concubine Yin. Speaking of this, Su Li deliberately lengthened the tone. The surrounding Black Scale army heard it, and they all pricked up their ears and paid attention to the next words. Tan Tai Yu couldn't help but be surprised and said, Junior sister apprentice, do you really have a way to cure my mother? You know, even after the master entered the imperial palace, he left with a disappointed face, and there was no way to cure concubine Yin's disease. Did the junior sister apprentice really surpass the master's medical skills in just 2 years? Su Li shook her head and smiled, and pretended to be shy. Senior fellow apprentice, what are you talking about? How can I cure concubine Yin with my little tricks? But I know that there is a person who can definitely do it, and that person happens to be in Tianji country. I think it won't take long for concubine Yin to wake up. Su Li's words were not true, but with the existence of Tan Tai Feng, even if it was false, someone would believe it. Tan Tai Yu was immediately surprised and happy, and couldn't help but ask, Junior sister apprentice, who is the person you are talking about? Su Li smiled slightly, and a light flashed in her eyes. She slowly said 3 words. Mr. Li, it was him. Tan Tai Yu couldn't help but be stunned. He went to Dahan country to participate in the auction last year, and certainly heard the name of this person. At that time, he was still guessing who had better medical skills between him and the master. He didn't expect that it would be confirmed so soon. Unfortunately, the master was not in Tianji country. Accompanied by Tan Tai Yu, Su Li returned to Tianji Inn, but she didn't immediately return to Dahan country. She had already laid the groundwork, and the rest was to see Tan Tai Feng's action. However, Tianji country and Dahan country were very similar. One person's words were the law. It was believed that the news would spread in a few days. However, after waiting for 2 days, Su Li didn't wait for the news that Tan Tai Yu entered the East Palace, but she waited for an uninvited guest. Where is Su Li? Take me there. Second princess, the fourth lord has ordered that you can't. Get out. I want to ask what the little bitch did to make the fourth brother end up like this. The noise outside came into her ears. Su Li, who was meditating and practicing, trembled her eyelashes. She opened her eyes and saw Fang Yuan's eyes full of inquiry. Su Li frowned slightly. Of course, she knew who the person was. It was Tantai Mingyue. From her tone, it seemed that senior fellow apprentice was in trouble. Could it be that Tantai Feng broke his promise? As this thought flashed in her mind, Su Li's eyes flashed slightly. She opened her red lips slightly and said, "Bring her here." Feng Yuan opened the door without saying anything. But after a dozen breaths, he carried Tantai Mingyue, who was like a frightened rabbit, in the room like a chicken. From her reaction, Su Li knew that Feng Yuan's method of bringing her here was certainly not very gentle. Seeing that she lost her elegance, Su Li rubbed her eyebrows with a headache and said helplessly, "Who let you do it?" Feng Yuan looked at Tantai Mingyue coldly. He loosened his hand and threw her rudely to the ground. He looked dissatisfied. "She scolded you." He heard clearly that he called her little bitch just now. So, even if he knew that Su Li asked him to invite Tantai Mingyue to come here, he couldn't help but do it. Tantai Mingyue knelt on the ground and heard Feng Yuan's words. She was angry, but her body shook more violently. Chapter 300. Who the hell are you? Tantai Mingyue looked at Su Li, who was sitting at the table with a helpless expression. She suppressed the fear in her heart and asked, "How could a princess of the secular country make a senior at the peak of the inborn realm willing to follow her? Moreover, she was a young inborn expert at the age of 20. Su Li was really not simple as she thought when she met her for the first time. But she didn't expect that Su Li's background could be so strong. "It doesn't matter who I am." Su Li looked back at Tantai Mingyue. Since Feng Yuan had exposed something, she didn't bother to continue to pretend. "You should be glad that you have a good younger brother. Otherwise, based on what you said outside, even if I killed you, your father wouldn't have a single word of objection." Tantai Mingyue trembled, and the first thought was that Su Li was scaring her. She was the favorite daughter of her father. How could she be afraid of Su Li? But when she thought of Feng Yuan's cultivation, she didn't dare to say a word. "Well, you don't have to be too afraid. Tell me what happened to senior fellow apprentice you?" Seeing Tantai Mingyue couldn't help being scared, Su Li gave up the idea of continuing to frighten her and asked aloud. After Su Li mentioned it, Tantai Mingyue suddenly remembered the business. She didn't have time to be afraid and said quickly, "Miss Su, fourth brother was taken away by Tantai Dong. You go to save him." "Tantai Dong?" Su Li frowned, and Feng Yuan reminded her in time, "It's the first prince. The woman who made trouble in the Tianji Inn was a chess piece in the hands of the first princess." During this time, Chu Qingning and others were not idle in the inn, and they had investigated a lot of information. Yes, Tantai Dong was unhappy because father gave the Tianji Inn to fourth brother. Tantai Mingyue continued, "Yesterday, I don't know how the news was leaked. He knew that fourth brother secretly entered the palace with the help of mother. He immediately detained fourth brother in the name of abuse of private power." Tantai Mingyue said anxiously, "Fourth brother was arrested this morning. It has been half a day. I don't know how he is now." Su Li raised her eyebrows and looked at Feng Yuan. The latter immediately understood and turned away. Tantai Mingyue was confused. Before long, Chu Qingning and Feng Mu came in. Feng Mu glanced at Tantai Mingyue, who was still kneeling on the ground, and said, "Eldest brother has set off. The dragon car is downstairs." "Then let's go." Su Li got up and glanced at Tantai Mingyue, who was happy. "Take her with you." Outside the first prince's residence, a dragon carriage stopped at the entrance. Immediately, the guards on both sides of the gate tensed up. Whoosh! The door of the dragon carriage opened, and a group of people led by Su Li got off. Tantai Mingyue looked up and saw the words, "First Prince's Mansion." She was relieved and couldn't help but step forward to enter the mansion, but was stopped by the guards on both sides. "Second Princess." His First Highness said that the residence is under martial law and that unauthorized people are not allowed to enter. At this moment, Tantai Mingyue had recovered the imposing manner of a princess. When she heard the guard's words, her pretty face turned slightly cold, and she said coldly, "Presumptuous. This empress is a member of the imperial family, and this is the residence of my eldest imperial brother. How can I be regarded as an outsider?" You are just a guard. Do you want to offend me? When the guard heard the words, his face changed slightly, but he still did not step aside. Instead, he said, "Second princess, if you're here for the fourth prince, you can go back now." His Highness the First Prince said that everything was a misunderstanding, and he had already let the fourth prince go. Now the first prince's mansion is under martial law, and it has nothing to do with the fourth prince. Tantai Mingyue was stunned when she heard the words. She looked slightly relaxed and hesitated for a while. She really wanted to go back to see whether the fourth brother really returned to the mansion. If the first brother let the fourth brother go, her unscrupulous behavior would inevitably aggravate the conflict. It was not a good strategy. At this moment, Su Li, who looked indifferent without any change, stood in front of her and faced the two guards. Tantai Mingyue was slightly stunned. She, who had been a master for many years, realized at this moment that this action would not change because of her thoughts. Whether the senior fellow apprentice has gone back or not, we will know when we go in. Su Li didn't look at the two guards. Her eyes seemed to see everything inside through the gate. Fang Yuan, open the gate. As soon as she finished speaking, the gate immediately made a loud sound and slowly opened inward. Fang Yuan's straight figure fell into the eyes of everyone and the two guards who were completely stunned. Then he became furious. Who is so presumptuous? How dare you break into the first prince's mansion without permission? Fang Yuan seemed not to hear the words of the two guards. He walked directly out of the gate and said as if there was no one else, "I have found him. He is safe for the time being." Su Li's eyes darkened, and her eyebrows were full of anger. Safe for the time being? That meant he was injured? When the two guards heard Fang Yuan's words, their faces suddenly changed. When they were about to shout, they were slapped unconscious by Chu Qingning. After that, Chu Qingning did not forget to say, "You two little ants, who gave you the courage to chirp here?" After dealing with the two guards, Su Li and others filed in. Soon they were found by other patrolling guards and surrounded. A trace of impatience flashed across Su Li's face. She said lightly, "Rush in as fast as you can. Don't hold back." Hearing her words, Yun Yi and others, who had not fought before, immediately became excited. A group of more than a dozen people rushed into the crowd like wolves into a flock of sheep. For a moment, screams were constantly heard. In the blood rain, Su Li followed the guidance of Fang Yuan all the way to the depth of the courtyard. Her plain white clothes were not stained with blood at all. Tantai Mingyue stared blankly at Su Li's figure. She stood in the same place and felt cold all over. The girl's figure, which was originally delicate and lovely in her eyes, was as deep as an abyss at this moment. All of them are in the inborn realm. She turned her head and saw the one-sided battle scene. She was terrified. Who could expect that all the young men and women around Su Li had reached the inborn realm without exception, and none of them reached the inborn fifth hurdle? Was she the legendary young lord of a sect in the spiritual circle? At the same time, endless regret spread in her heart. She couldn't figure out why Su Li directly rushed in when she came to ask for people. What should I do? She is so unscrupulous. Even my father will be furious and put all the blame on the fourth brother. The fourth brother is at a critical moment. Tantai Dong is worried that he can't find a chance to pull him down, but Su Li directly sends the opportunity to him. What is she thinking? Tantai Mingyue was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Even if Tantai Yu was rescued today, he would not be the emperor. No, I have to follow them. If Su Li directly kills Tantai Dong, won't my fourth brother be in trouble? Thinking of this, Tantai Mingyue anxiously followed. She had no doubt about whether Su Li dared to kill Tantai Dong. When Tantai Mingyue chased to the backyard, Su Li was already standing outside a courtyard. There were 9 inborn seniors recruited by the first prince to guard outside the courtyard. It was very lively. But now they were all beheaded, and their corpses lay quietly on the grass outside the courtyard. Therefore, it became a quiet courtyard. Tantai Mingyue followed Su Li and saw these corpses. She couldn't help but be frightened. She had a new understanding of Fang Yuan's cultivation. Su Li glanced at it and frowned slightly. Fang Yuan's hostility became heavier. Some of it was influenced by the last trip to Nanjiang, but most of it was probably because he was imitating, and the person he imitated was herself. Su Li thought about it, and a trace of bitterness appeared in her mouth. She asked herself honestly, and it seemed that she was not qualified to say that others were heavy with hostility. Just because of the accumulation of a lifetime, she could control the killing intent freely. The hostility was integrated into her bones and did not leak. But Feng Yuan just started. This was a sign of stepping into the evil circle. The evil circle is free and unfettered. Everything is according to the heart, but he seems to be controlled by the killing intent. It takes time to settle the understanding and eliminate the obsession. Unfortunately, I don't have so much time. Su Li sighed softly, pushed open the courtyard and stepped into it. Although Tan Tai Mingyue didn't know why she sighed, she didn't dare to ask more. She quickly followed in and whispered, "There is a senior beside Tan Tai Dong. Although he doesn't have much life, he is at the peak of the inborn realm. Should we wait for your protector Feng?" Before Tan Tai Mingyue finished her words, a figure suddenly flashed beside Su Li. Feng Yuan, who was in black without blood, had already appeared. Feng Yuan looked at Tan Tai Mingyue, who was stunned, and said expressionlessly, "I will lead the way." Su Li was silent for a moment. She took a deep look at Feng Yuan, who was extremely serious, and nodded gently. Feng Yuan's eyes were slightly fixed, as if he had finally determined something. There was a trace of bitterness in his expressionless face. He didn't say anything and went straight inside. She sighed again. Tan Tai Mingyue was confused. She didn't know what the master and the servant were talking about, but she cared about Tan Tai Yu now, so she immediately followed Feng Yuan in. The courtyard was very small and could be seen at a glance. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a high scaffold, which was stained with blood. Tan Tai Yu was hanging on it, dying. "Fourth brother." Tan Tai Mingyue was so angry that her eyes almost popped out. She no longer felt that what Su Li had done was too much. Endless anger rushed from her heart to her mind in an instant, burning up her reason. "Tan Tai Dong, you are courting death." Second sister, who are you talking about?" "I am your elder brother." Before Tan Tai Mingyue finished her words, laughter sounded from the house. Then the door of the house was opened, and a handsome young man in a golden robe walked out slowly. Behind him was a wrinkled old man in a gray robe with a stooped body. He occasionally leaked a trace of pneuma, which even shocked Feng Yuan, not to mention Tan Tai Mingyue. Longevity realm. Tan Tai Mingyue's face was pale. She stared at the old man in gray who made her tremble. Even her father didn't have that kind of pneuma. She only felt it from the old minister of offerings of the Tan Tai family. Chapter 301. Let's go. Su Li, let's go quickly. The longevity realm is the divine realm. Even if you have more guards of the inborn realm, you can't stop him. Only in the palace, only the minister of the longevity realm in the palace can save us. Tan Tai Mingyue transmitted the sound in horror and stepped back quickly. She had no time to care about Tan Tai Yu, who was still hanging on the scaffold. The reason under the fear told her that if she didn't go to the palace to find help, she couldn't save anyone. But before she walked a few steps, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared in front of the courtyard gate. It was the gray-clothed elder. Tan Tai Mingyue stopped and looked back. She was shocked when she saw Tan Tai Dong standing alone in the same place. When did he appear? She didn't even notice it at all. The gray-clothed elder didn't seem to know the situation outside. At this moment, he saw the corpses outside the courtyard in his psychic awareness. His face instantly turned cold. "Tan Mingyue, you have such hidden power. You even killed all the seniors I recruited. If I hadn't broken through this time, I'm afraid I would have been killed by you." Hearing the elder's words, Tan Tai Dong's smile was slightly stiff. "Elder Hui, what did you say?" The gray-clothed elder raised his head and looked disrespectful. He said bluntly to Tan Tai Dong, "Your First Highness, all the diners I recruited for you were killed by your second sister. According to the previous agreement, you should know what to do, right?" As soon as the words came out, Tan Tai Mingyue was slightly stunned. Immediately, her eyes lit up with hope. She said, "Elder sir, I don't know what the deal is between you and the first brother. As long as you are willing to work for my fourth brother, I am willing to pay double." Second sister. Tan Tai Dong, who was hesitant, couldn't help laughing angrily when he heard Tan Tai Mingyue poaching him in front of him. "What do you think Elder Hui is? You can't move him easily. You can't give him what he wants." Tan Tai Mingyue secretly glanced at Su Li, who had walked to the scaffold. She couldn't help but gnash her teeth. "Elder Hui, I believe that there is a way. What's more, you don't know me. How do you know that I can't give you what you want?" Upon hearing this, the gray-robed old man immediately smiled amiably. "Your Highness, although what you said makes some sense, it's still not enough. But your elder brother is right. What I want is half of the treasury of Tianji country and the core design of the dragon vehicle. Now do you still think you can give me double the price?" Hearing Elder Hui's words, Tan Tai Mingyue was completely shocked. She looked at Tan Tai Dong with a gloomy expression unbelievably. "Big brother, you actually— Shut up." Tan Tai Dong was full of anger. He suppressed Tan Tai Mingyue's voice and scolded, "If it was before, I only needed to pay the design drawings to sit on the throne. Now I have to pay half of the national treasury, all thanks to you. What qualifications do you have to lecture me?" Tan Tai Mingyue's body trembled slightly, not because of guilt, but because the nominal elder brother in front of her had been completely crazy for the throne. After all, Tan Tai Dong was in a high position. After taking a deep breath, he recovered his calmness. He first bowed to Elder Hui from a distance and said, "Don't worry, Elder Hui. As long as I can take charge of Tianji country, you will be the national master of Tianji country. All the requirements I promised before will be fulfilled." "Ha, that's good." The old man in gray nodded and smiled. Although he succeeded in breaking through by relying on the resources of the first prince, he obviously didn't take Tan Tai Dong seriously after breaking through. "Big brother, you are inviting a wolf into the house. Father will never allow you to do this." Tan Tai Mingyue still wanted to struggle. Tan Tai Dong just sneered and said softly, "For the sake of father, I can keep you and fourth brother alive. But others must be punished for treason. The injuries on you and fourth brother are also caused by them. Do you understand?" After saying this, Tan Tai Dongshin seemed to have made a decision, and his whole person became relaxed. He didn't believe that with the help of Elder Hui, other brothers could make any trouble. Even father would no longer ignore him and really treat him as a crown prince. Ding! A crisp sound interrupted Tan Tai Dong's dream. Everyone heard the sound and immediately saw Su Li, who had been ignored for a long time, gently put Tan Tai Yu on the ground. Elder Hui's pupils shrank, and he looked at the broken chain on the ground. He didn't hear any sound before. When did the chain break? Elder Hui was still hesitating whether to take action or not, but Tan Tai Dong was angry. He waved his hand to slap Su Li. "Where does this silly girl come from? You are courting death." Su Li slowly raised her eyes and looked calm. She saw the palm approaching quickly. Tan Mingyue screamed in horror, "Su Li, hide!" It was true that Su Li had a group of very strong fans, but she had never seen Su Li fight. Su Li's face had always been pale and delicate. She guessed that. Su Li was at most in the acquired realm, while Tan Tai Dong had the cultivation of the inborn second hurdle. How could Su Li be his opponent? Seeing that Su Li was motionless as if she was scared silly, Tan Tai Dong laughed and moved faster. "Second sister, the helper you invited is still a little inexperienced. Little girl, remember to be more careful in the next life. Don't follow the wrong person. Go to hell." At the moment when the palm print came, an extremely fast sword light flashed in front of Su Li, and then there was one more person besides Su Li, Fong Yuan. Puff! A broken arm flew in the air, and blood sprayed. Su Li took a step back, just avoiding all the blood rain. "Ah! My arm!" Tan Tai Dong held his right arm, which only had the upper arm, and made a very sad voice. It all happened so fast that people had no time to react. The battle was over before the smile on Elder Hui's face disappeared. "First Highness." Elder Huey's face was gloomy. He rushed out, but he was stopped by another indifferent young man. Luo Yichen reached out and stroked the bloodless blade in his hand. His eyes were full of fighting intent. He said lightly, "Old guy, you can't go there yet. Ignorant boy, get out of here." Elder Hui was furious. His extraordinary momentum broke out completely from his old body. He and Tan Tai Dong were now bound together for good or bad. Tan Tai Dong's arm was cut off because of his carelessness. Tan Tai Dong couldn't have any mishap in the following days. Crack, crack. The horrible pressure was like a mountain, and Luo Yichen's bones made an unbearable sound. He stepped back a few steps, but just a few steps. Then the fighting intent in his eyes was more intense, and the long blade in his hand turned into a snow-white light. "Take this. You're courting death." Elder Hui was very anxious and tried his best to fight with Luo Yichen. In the blink of an eye, he had fought with Luo Yichen dozens of times. Luo Yichen's body was covered with countless scars, but his pneuma did not decline at all. Instead, the light of the blade in his hand became more dazzling. He blocked it? Tan Tai Mingyue stared at the two people who were raging in the courtyard. If her skin hadn't been hurt by the sharp wind of the blade, she would have thought that she was in a dream. Suddenly, she thought of something and looked at Su Li, who was firmly protected by Fang Yuan. Her eyes were full of deep fear. A man at the peak of the inborn realm, who could not be defeated by a practitioner of the longevity realm, also obeyed Su Li. She thought that she had known all about Su Li, but now she found that Su Li was like an abyss, and she could never see the depth. One end of the courtyard was fighting fiercely, but the momentum could not be passed to Su Li, because it was all blocked by Fang Yuan. Su Li squatted down and felt the pulse for Tan Taiyu. Then her eyebrows immediately relaxed. "It's just a skin injury. Although he fainted due to excessive blood loss, it's not a big deal." Su Li took out a healing elixir and stuffed it into Tan Taiyu's mouth. Then her eyes fell on Tan Tai Dong, who was holding his broken arm. After Luo Yichen blocked Elder Hui, Tan Tai Dong immediately panicked. He completely lost his previous arrogance. Instead, he covered his mouth and did not dare to make a sound, for fear that he would disturb Su Li and lose his life. From time to time, he looked at the two people who were still fighting. Facing Fang Yuan's increasingly oppressive eyes, his forehead gradually broke into a cold sweat, and he was not confident enough to say, Who are you?" Elder Hui is the elder of Shaoshan Palace in the spiritual circle. He will definitely win. You'd better let me go otherwise." Su Li raised her eyebrows and looked at Tan Tai Mingyue. She laughed and said, "The first prince of Tianji country only has such a state of mind?" Tan Tai Mingyue was speechless for a while. No one would perform well in the face of life and death. "I won't hurt your life." Su Li got up and no longer looked at Tan Tai Dong. "Your fate should be decided by your father himself." Although in her opinion, with Tan Tai Feng's vision, other people were dispensable except for concubine Yin, who had accompanied him for countless years. But in order to hide from the mirror spirit of reincarnation mirror, she should not do too much. After that, Su Li glanced at the battlefield which was tilted to Elder Hui and said softly, "In order to prove his strength, Luo Yichen has reached the limit. In addition, the old man has just broken through. After a battle, his genuine energy has been integrated and his strength has increased by more than 20%. If you don't go, he will be killed." Fang Yuan nodded when he heard the words. He turned around and paused, saying, "I'll be back soon." Su Li smiled sweetly and did not speak. Tan Tai Mingyue heard Su Li's analysis and was confused. But she still heard that Su Li's grasp of the battle situation was still above Fang Yuan's. Could it be that Su Li was able to win over so many young seniors by her absolute eyesight? Tan Tai Mingyue was puzzled and still didn't think that Su Li had Xiangong. Seeing the situation in the field stabilized again, she couldn't help but worry and whispered, "Miss Su, why do I feel that the two of them are still no match for Elder Hui?" Chapter 302. What should we do? Tan Tai Mingyue was more and more worried. Today's series of changes and shocks had made her completely lose the calmness that a royal princess should have. Tan Tai Dong, who was kneeling on the ground, heard the words and stared at the battle in the courtyard. Because of Su Li's words, he seemed to regain his hope. Bang, boom. The three people fought fiercely, and the genuine energy surged like a huge wave. The broken courtyard wall finally couldn't bear it and collapsed, revealing Chu Qingning and others who were rushing outside the wall. Su Li didn't care about anything else and stared at the development of the battle with her dark, starry eyes. This battle came at the right time for Feng Yuan and Luo Yichen. An ordinary practitioner who had just broken through the longevity realm gave them enough pressure. If they could comprehend something with the support of her resources, they could cross the barrier soon and become real practitioners. As time went on slowly, Feng Yuan and Luo Yichen's genuine energy was about to be exhausted and their pneuma was weak. Although Elder Hui was disheveled and embarrassed, his pneuma was still strong and even more mellow than before. Under such circumstances, the two of them immediately seemed to be unable to resist. Ha ha ha! Elder Hui gave a long roar, and the grievance on his face disappeared. He laughed ferociously and said, "You two little bastards, if I hadn't just broken through, how could I allow you to bully me like this? Now I will let you taste the real power of the longevity realm." Boom! A destructive power burst out from Elder Hui, and everything around him was shaken into powder. Luo Yichen and Feng Yuan's expressions changed dramatically at the same time, and they retreated without saying a word. But they retreated quickly, while Elder Hui moved faster. In the blink of an eye, he was above them. His hands were like claws, and he grabbed at their heads. Danger! Retreat! Tantai Mingyue was so anxious that her voice changed. But Feng Yuan and Luo Yichen had reached the extreme speed, and it was impossible for them to retreat. In this split second, Su Li squinted her eyes and pointed to the distance, shooting out a starlight as fast as a strand of hair. Fast. Too fast. Even Tantai Mingyue only saw that Su Li made a meaningless movement, and didn't see any genuine energy bursting out of her fingertips. At the same time, a sense of life and death crisis rose in Elder Huey's heart. Fear instantly magnified in his eyes. What is that? His mind was blank, and he couldn't care about Feng Yuan and Li Mu anymore. He tried his best to avoid it, but his mind was transmitted to his body. Before he could make any response, his eyebrows were penetrated. Everything came to an abrupt end. Thump! How can this be? This old man's everything has just begun. Elder Huey's body fell to the ground like a piece of leather. His turbid eyes were filled with disbelief. He only managed to say one sentence before he breathed his last. Phew! Su Li gently exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. She calmed down and felt it. Then she slightly raised her lips. This person's strength was even lower than Lin Yanxing's, so there was nothing to be happy about. What made her happy was that with the steady improvement of her cultivation, the consumption of her foundation was indeed less than before. If she could find a suitable balance point, she would be able to stay in the world for a longer time. If the old ancestor of Shaoshan Palace can't fight like Tan Tai Feng, then Shaoshan Palace is nothing to me. However, if I want to rest easy, I must fight with that person. Su Li's eyes flashed a touch of caution. She didn't know how long that person had lived and had endless means. She was not prepared enough. Miss Su, a voice sounded in her ears, which pulled Su Li back to reality from her thoughts. She turned around and saw Tantai Mingyue. The latter was immediately like a frightened rabbit. Her face turned pale and her mouth opened and closed for a long time, but she couldn't say a complete sentence. She only saw that Su Li stretched out her hand and slowly pointed forward. Then the practitioner of the longevity realm who had transcended mortality and entered holiness died. If Feng Yuan and Luo Yichen were not still sitting on the messy floor and gasping, she even thought that the old ancestor of the longevity realm was fake. Killing Elder Hui with one finger. Su Li, what is her cultivation? Tantai Mingyue couldn't help but quietly look at Su Li's side face. The girl in front of her looked harmless, but she was far from her imagination. Clean him up. Anyway, he is a practitioner of the longevity realm. Let him rest in peace. Su Li looked at the old man's empty wrist and said to Chu Qingning and others, Then she walked to Fang Yuan and Chu Qingning and handed out 2 elixirs. You did a good job. Recover and comprehend well. Break through as soon as possible. Fang Yuan took the elixir without hesitation and continued to meditate. He was determined and would not treat Su Li as an outsider. Luo Yichen hesitated for a moment and took the elixir. He whispered, "Thank you. I still have some private affairs to deal with in Tianji country." "I don't know," Su Li said with a faint smile. "Luo Yichen, have you forgotten who you are?" Luo Yichen's face changed slightly and he became silent. How could he forget that he had promised to work for Su Li for 10 years? Now only 2 years had passed, and Su Li had invested so much in him that it was far more than his 10 years of loyalty. Now he proposed to act alone. Even he himself felt that it was very inappropriate. He closed his eyes and recalled the humiliation he suffered in the past. He gritted his teeth and said, "Su Li, I know that I can't repay what I owe you in this life, but stop." Su Li interrupted Luo Yichen's words and smiled sweetly. "You seem to have misunderstood me. It's just a deal between you and me. I'm not interested in knowing what you're carrying, but just like I helped Chu Qingning and others, I will not stop you, and I will lend you my strength." Luo Yichen's body shook slightly and his face changed. His lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. A deal? Su Li had been talking about a deal, but what he saw was Su Li's unilateral contribution. Whether it was practicing resources or revenge for them, what did Su Li want? With your current strength, it's easy for you to deal with a secular force. It seems that the force you offended before is not a small one. Heal your injury first, and then take Chu Qingning and others with you. You should know that I don't need to be afraid of anyone except for a few people in this world. As for Fang Yuan, Su Li glanced at the indifferent young man who was still in meditation and said, "He is on the verge of breaking through. When he wakes up, it's up to him." Luo Yichen was silent for a long time and finally didn't refuse as before. He said very seriously, "No matter what your purpose is, as long as it's not related to Shaohan, I will unconditionally execute your order." After that, he closed his eyes and continued to seize the time to heal. This sentence was a lifelong promise for him. The rest was needless to say. Su Li smiled slightly. All living beings in the illusion could not be real, and she was not the real herself. Luo Yichen's promise was very serious and he made up his mind to follow it for the rest of his life. But it was just an illusion, so there was no need to care about it. "Miss, everything is ready." After a while, Yun Yi ran to report. Su Li looked at the yard that became clean except for the blood on the ground. She nodded and turned to Tantai Mingyue, who was absent-minded, and said, "I'll leave the rest of the mess to you. Is there any problem?" Tantai Mingyue came to her senses and nodded quickly. "Of course, it's up to you." After Su Li's rampage, the first prince's mansion had almost no decent fighting capacity, so it didn't take much effort for her to deal with it. "Your father will not investigate what happened today, and there will be an imperial edict in a few days. You'd better keep my matter to yourself and don't let anyone know it, especially Tantai Yu." Su Li's indifferent eyes flashed a trace of sharpness, which made Tantai Mingyue's heart tremble slightly. She said, "As for the life of the first prince, when Tantai Yu wakes up, it's up to him to decide." What happened later had nothing to do with Su Li. She returned to Tianji Inn and let the news that the first prince's mansion was attacked spread all over Tianji City. She practiced quietly, and with the constant consumption of foundation, her cultivation steadily improved. Less than 3 days later, an amazing news finally spread. It turns out that the first prince wanted to rebel and was suppressed by the fourth prince. I heard that the first prince's arm was cut off by the second princess, and he was already a useless person. Today, the imperial edict of the imperial palace has been issued. His Majesty appointed the fourth prince as the crown prince. Even if the first prince is still as powerful as before, he can't do anything after the fourth prince controls the hidden power of the Tantai family. Tut, who can think that the position of the crown prince is finally won by the fourth prince, who has the mildest temperament. There is no lack of help from concubine Yin, but I'm afraid that the fourth prince fought for more. His Highness also has a good sister. He just got the position of the crown prince firmly. Unless he doesn't want to be the crown prince himself, no one can pull him down. The officials in the imperial court were talking about it. At the same time, in the East Palace, Tantaiyu, who was wearing the crown prince robe, looked at the extremely exquisite scenery outside the East Palace with a confused face. What does Imperial Father mean by those words? Tantaiyu frowned tightly. After being caught by Tantai Dong, he was beaten to a coma. He thought that everything was over. Unexpectedly, as soon as he woke up, he received the imperial edict to take over the position of the crown prince. After he recovered from his injury, he was secretly summoned by Father. Father's order made him even more surprised. Even if Mr. Li cured my mother, Father will not exaggerate to use all the power of the country for Mr. Li, right? And according to Father's words, my crown prince is appointed by Mr. Li, and Father also agreed? Tantaiyu was full of doubts. What he heard today almost exceeded the limit of the palace education he received for more than a decade. A hermit in Jianghu could influence the next master of Tianji country and even become the controller behind Tianji country. It was too exaggerated. Father, aren't you afraid that Tianji country and Tantai family will be destroyed by Mr. Li? Chapter 303. Let's not talk about the reaction of the palace first. Let's go back to the day when Luo Yichen left Tantai City. Chu Qingning and others followed Luo Yichen all the way and finally arrived at a provincial city before sunset. Tianji country, like Dahan country, implemented a provincial system. It was only a day's ride from Tantai City. It should be the nearest provincial city to the capital. Luoyue City? Chu Qingning pulled the reins and stopped the horse. He looked up and saw the 3 black stone characters mottled by wind and frost, but they could still be seen clearly. He said excitedly, "Brother Luo, is this your hometown?" Luo Yichen didn't seem to hear Chu Qingning's words. He looked at the ancient city under the setting sun and was lost in thought. He didn't answer. His indifferent face was the same as Fang Yuan's, but there was a touch of complexity. "Brother Luo?" Chu Qingning wanted to ask again, but he was pulled by Fang Mu. Fang Mu reminded him in a low voice, "Brother Chu, I think Brother Luo is very sad. Don't disturb him." Chu Qingning raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but mutter, "As a man, if you don't agree, just do it. Why are there so many twists and turns? Will your cultivation speed be faster if you do this?" Fang Mu almost laughed. In the past 2 years, Brother Chu had been struggling with the progress of cultivation. No matter how hard he tried to catch up, his cultivation was always slower than eldest brother and Brother Luo. It could only be said that fate made fools of people. When they talked in a low voice, Luo Yichen had taken back his sight and glanced at the notice board beside the city gate. One of the wanted posters was so rotten that its face couldn't be seen clearly. After a moment of silence, he finally said, "Let's enter the city." "Let's go. Brother Luo, don't think so much. We have Suli. What else do you need to worry about? It's really tiring to run all the way. Let's find an inn to have a rest first." Chu Qingning handed the horse to Fang Mu, took Luo Yichen's arm and walked to the city. Being disturbed by him, Luo Yichen's annoyance dissipated a lot. He immediately smiled bitterly and let Chu Qingning take him into the city. "Brother Chu is really good at ordering people," Fang Mu said in a low voice after they went far away. Then he handed the horse to Yun Yi and ran to the notice board. He looked at it for a long time but couldn't see the appearance of the person on the wanted poster that Luo Yichen had just seen. "Forget it. Anyway, I'm sure I'll know a lot about Brother Luo's past. I'm not in a hurry." Fang Mu clapped his hands and quickly entered the city, leaving Yun Yi, who was holding 4 horses helplessly. This group of people that Miss has recruited are indeed dragons and phoenixes among men, but their temperaments are really— Yun Yi shook his head. He handed all the horses to the other cloud guards and followed them. He was not slacking off. The people in front of him were penniless. If he didn't catch up with them, he might make a fool of himself when he arrived at the inn. Although Luoyue City was not as prosperous as Tantai City, it was not a desolate place. Under the arrangement of Yun Yi, They soon stayed in a very good inn. After putting their luggage, a group of 13 people went downstairs and found 3 tables to sit down. The food had not been served yet. Chu Qingning didn't need to listen very much to know what had happened in the city recently from the discussions of the diners around him. A fat man weighing 150 kilograms crushed his wife to death when he got married, and he also got into a lawsuit? Oh my God. Wow, the poor scholar was kept by the rich woman of the cloth workshop because of his face? Being handsome means that you can do whatever you want. Fortunately, this young master's looks are not bad either. Chu Qingning sighed narcissistically while listening. His voice was so loud that it attracted the attention of the diners around him. The cloud guards who had not had much contact with him were embarrassed and chose to sit further away. Fong Mu and Yun Yi had already been used to it. They were thick-skinned because of Chu Qingning. They just waited for the food to be served and didn't care about anything else. After a while, the hot food was finally served. When Chu Qingning saw the food, he finally stopped talking to himself and started to eat and drink. Luo Yichen, who was relaxed after being disturbed by him, smiled slightly. He was about to enjoy the hometown food that he hadn't seen for many years, but the conversation from the next table made him completely stop. Hey, have you heard? It's about the Luo family. It's too slow for you to get the news. If it's your turn to say it, the miss of the Luo family may have been married. Speaking of the Luo family, it's really miserable. It was originally a good business family, and even a martial arts champion was about to come out. But because the young master took a fancy to Luo Yingying's beauty, the Luo family was ruined. Hush! You even dare to talk nonsense about that person. Don't you want to live? The scholar who was warned seemed to be unhappy when he heard the words. He straightened his neck and said, "What's the matter? She is dead. I just said it. Is it possible that something bad will happen?" Slurp, Chu Qingning drank a mouthful of soup and swallowed the food in his mouth. His eyes were slightly bright and he whispered, "Brother Luo? What the 2 people said just now, could it be?" Luo Yichen put down the chopsticks, and the ease on his face disappeared. When he was about to get up, the door was suddenly kicked open, and then a group of servants in standard clothes came in. The fat servant who was the leader was dressed more delicately. He seemed to be a small leader. His fat face shook, and his mung bean eyes swept the field. Suddenly, his eyes fixed on the scholar who spoke before, and he said with a grim smile, "Boy, you dare to make rumors and make trouble in the territory of the He family. Do you want to die? Catch him and take him back to be punished." The scholar immediately panicked. He turned around and wanted to escape, but how could a scholar like him be a match for a martial artist? Soon, his face was pressed against the dishes on the table and he couldn't move. The wine and dishes were scattered all over the floor. Mercy! Mercy! I just said it casually. I didn't mean it." The vague voice of the scholar came from the dishes. The strong man who pressed him saw it with cold eyes and exerted force. The scholar immediately screamed and couldn't speak. The rest of the diners were silent and gathered together in a panic, as if they could be safer in this way. The fat servant walked over with a complacent smile on his face, as if he was enjoying the fearful gazes. However, he was soon unable to smile because there were actually 3 tables where the people were sitting calmly, not moving at all. Oh, I forgot to remind them that the people at these 3 tables are the same group. They are all foreigners. How can they know the background of the He family? The shopkeeper hid behind the counter and saw this scene. He complained in his heart. If they fought, his inn would suffer. The fat servant saw the grinning Chu Qingning at a glance. It was not because of anything else, but because the smile on Chu Qingning's face was too mean, which made him very angry. He was used to being domineering. Except for the master, who dared to smile in front of him. He pointed at Chu Qingning and immediately ordered, "Where are the fools? How dare they continue to sit when they see me? Catch them all. If they resist, break their legs directly." The smile on Chu Qingning's face disappeared immediately. He stood up and was about to say something, but his arm was grabbed by a hand. He looked back and saw Luo Yichen, who was full of fear. He said to him, "The He family is the family of the current Prime Minister and the Empress. Although Su Li made a deal with the emperor and made Tan Taiyu the crown prince, he was just the crown prince. If the contradiction between him and the He family was put on the surface, maybe Su Li's arrangement would be ruined because of him. So, even if Su Li told him to do it, he still hesitated and hesitated all the way. Chu Qingning immediately laughed and said, "I wonder why you have a dead face all the way. It turns out that you didn't listen to Su Li's instructions at all." Instructions? Luo Yichen was confused. What did she say? The fat servant, who was standing at the side, heard the two of them talking back and forth, not taking him seriously at all. His face instantly turned green, and he immediately shouted in exasperation, "What are you waiting for?" Good timing. My hands are itchy. Chu Qingning laughed and immediately rushed into the servants like a tiger into a flock of sheep. His laughter echoed behind him. "Xiaomu, you tell him." Fang Mu saw that Chu Qingning was the first one and couldn't help but say anxiously, "Brother Chu, leave too for me. I haven't had enough last time." After saying that, he didn't care about anything else and directly rushed into the crowd. The two of them attacked one after another, and each of their attacks hit the legs of the thugs. The sound of bones breaking rang out incessantly. The innkeeper and the group of diners were instantly stunned, and they even forgot to escape. Alas, she didn't leave any for me again. In the blink of an eye, the battle was coming to an end. Yun Yi sighed and smiled to Luo Yichen, who was stunned. "Protector Luo, you don't have to worry about Miss at all. Before you came, Miss ordered that you can do whatever you want in Tianji country except for tearing down the imperial palace. Do whatever you want." Luo Yichen took a deep breath, and his heart was instantly filled with an inexplicable sense of heroism. How could he be so confident to say such words? I was wrong. Nanjiang country is like this. Tianji country is nothing, let alone a family in Tianji country. No matter how big the He family is, how can it be bigger than the Tantai family? Luo Yichen figured it out and was in a good mood. The knot in his heart in the past few days was instantly dispelled. When he was about to vent his anger, he found that the battle had already ended. The servants were wailing all over the ground. Without exception, their legs were broken. The fat servant was even more miserable. He was punched by Chu Qingning, and his third leg was also broken. Chu Qingning found a relatively intact stool and sat down. He took a long sigh of relief and said happily, "It's cool. It's a pity that Tong didn't come with me, so no one can appreciate my heroism." "Brother Chu, you did it on purpose, didn't you?" Fang Mu came over with a bitter face and sat down gloomily. Every time he wanted to fight someone, there would always be a cheap back in front of him. Chu Qingning smiled and said, "It's not good for children to fight and kill. I'm doing this for you. Do you understand?" Fang Mu's face immediately darkened. Not to mention anything else, when he was in the spiritual circle, he had killed at least 800 warriors. It was not a big deal to steal people's lives. There was no need to talk about doing good deeds. Or you dare to fight against my He family. You will regret it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.